Well, he's here now.
Okay. Hey,
Oh.
hold on.
Hey,
I gotta
Jimbob.
hear you.
Yeah, no worries.
Discord talk.
Test.
Test,
Okay.
test.
Ask yourself. Yeah. Okay. You guys are here. Everyone else, Vampire Frog. Ask yourself. He wanted to talk about this topic, so we don't want to pile on or anything like that. So just let us talk, and then afterward, Big Tech.
Yep.
You can talk.
Well, yeah, big tech seems nice. I'm not too worried about big tech. I don't know Vampire Frog, but let's just go to a Jimbob and Isaac room, because these things tend to turn into a bunch of people trying to talk. So I'd rather just make that not even possible from the outset.
Okay, then I'll just ask those guys to leave temporarily.
But others can pop into the room, right?
I think I can set it. Hold on.
Okay. Or we
Might
can
be able
go
to
to a call if you'd rather.
You want me to go?
Hold on a second. Yeah, we're just trying to get it to 2 people because he doesn't video. I know there's a way to do this. They'll listen though. I'll just kick them out verbally.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I'm trusting you on that, Jimbob.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They'll listen to me. I'll yell at them.
Okay. Well, yeah. Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks. How about you?
Pretty good overall. Lots of coding. I watched a bit of your stream the other day. Actually, I saw you do the warts song, and I laughed pretty hard at that.
Nice. Good.
Yeah.
If it brings out a laugh, I'm doing at least some minimal work here. So
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, you're funny with your impersonations and little
Thank you.
music box thing and stuff. That's it reminds me of a buddy I have.
It is really fun. The tech that we're allowed to have now is pretty fun for live streaming. Speaking of, you're a coder. We were just examining AI. Is that something you are worrying about, or is it just expand what a coder is the more AI does things?
Well, what do you mean by worry? Like, you talking like worry about like a job?
Taking your job?
So
Yeah.
I'm not in industry. I'm just like coding stuff for myself. But there's more. Yeah, people should probably worry about that though.
Worry about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my basic view, I don't think that it's just going to be another thing like, oh, you make this technology and everyone finds new roles. It's kind of a fundamentally different kind of technology, because it can just replace all the roles, especially once you pair it with robotics, and then it can operate in like physical 3D space. I just don't. I mean, what are you going to do when you can pay like just the cost of electricity to run some robot to do everything a manual laborer would do, or when like most of your intellectual work can be done by the thing? So immediate future, there's lots of stuff to do, but I mean, down the line, we're going to need something like UBI or some kind of way to redistribute the gains, or else, yeah, you're going to get some weird fucking crazy technocracy where the people controlling the AI get all the money and everyone else just gets fucked.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, let's get into the topic. Why don't you give me a steel man of what you think I'm arguing here from the evolutionary view specifically?
Yeah, that's actually kind of where I wanted to start. So by trying to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So before even the argument, just the conclusion, it sounds like you're saying that there isn't correct thinking if atheism is true.
No, not atheism, just evolution. Like, it's not a theistic atheist position. It's, if evolution is true, then what you call the brain as an organ, the development of that brain had no direction toward what it does, and even the thing that it does today is incidental. So what it does today isn't, it didn't arise to do the thing it does today. It just came from unguided processes, and it just incidentally does what it does today.
So something like, if evolution is true, then brains have no purpose. If brains have no purpose, then there is no correct thinking. And then the assumption for reductio is like, evolution is true, and then you get the conclusion there is no correct thinking. Something like that, or not quite?
I mean, it could be that. I don't know if you would know better if that was formed in a valid way. It's more like I'm trying to remove the word purpose because it gets conflated with like my purpose, like a sort of like light shining down on me. What am I here for? What's the reason for my existence? It's more saying that I want to make that clear because people run with the term purpose and they mangle it to these like larger scale purpose arguments or conceptions. I'm trying to just get it to what the brain does. The brain doesn't, from an evolutionary view, the brain doesn't, what it does, um, it wasn't created and it didn't arise to do what it does in order to do what it does, right? So it doesn't have, I want to use the language, it doesn't have a correct or incorrect way of operating instead of purpose. It doesn't have an incorrect or correct way of operating.
So just zooming up to the meta for a second, I'm just trying to get sort of, firstly, to make sure I understand the conclusion, so I know that we do disagree, and then to get some sort of general structure for the argument. And that's not to box you in. I'm of course
I understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
just say it for people watching. Sometimes people think I'm up to some weaselly fuckery or something, but it's just so that we get kind of a clear structure we can talk about. And frankly, if we put it into some structure and start talking about it, and you're like, okay, wait, actually, I boxed myself into some weird corner. That can't be quite right, but I don't think my fundamental idea is wrong. Then I'm just going to respond by being like, oh, okay, fine. Well, then we'd have to like reformulate it, and we could do that now, or we could do that some other time. So it's not a box you in kind of thing. It's a make sure I clearly understand what I'm actually fighting against, so that I'm not like punching a ghost kind of thing.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what it is. Like we can try to get it to an argument, but essentially in just natural language, what I'm saying is if the brain and every other organ in the body, it's just happenstance and incidental that it does what it does. The fact that it helps the organism survive is not really what's in question. The question is all of the things that happen in the body, the liver, the heart, the lungs, the brain, if those functions, right? If there's no proper or improper way for it to function, that is to say, there's a correct way it should be functioning and an incorrect way that it functions. If that doesn't exist, then if we apply that to the brain, one couldn't say from the evolutionary view there actually is a proper way to think, being that thinking from the evolutionary view would merely be reduced to a function of this thing.
So focusing just on the conclusion before thinking about the premises, the conclusion is supposed to be that there's no correct thinking.
Yes.
And obviously this is a conclusion that you're going to generate by taking a bunch of assumptions that your opponents make. No, this isn't your conclusion. This is like a reductio on the view.
Yeah. This is like internal to the view. If these things are true, if evolution is a long, unguided process that produces incidental function, that is to say, it's just happenstance and accidental that it does a thing. That is to say, if it's accidental, it's not properly doing a thing. It's not a right or wrong way of doing it. It's just unfolding. It's just an unfolding process that just happens to do a thing called thinking, or happens to do a thing called being able to grip a stick with your hand, or it happens to filter toxins and facilitate them exiting the body as a liver and so forth. These are all ultimately accidental chance mechanistic functions.
Okay, so I want to focus in on all the stuff that you just said, because that seems to me like those are the premises that get you to the conclusion. And you're saying that I have got the conclusion right. The idea is you're trying to show that there is no correct thinking.
Yeah, the conclusion would be there's no correct, but it's not just thinking. For this argument,
Well,
it's
there's no
fun to do
proper
the
function
thinking.
broadly is
Proper,
obviously what you're trying to
yes. Let's do that. It's probably better.
Yeah, I mean, because the proper function thing, that's actually my like trigger word. Like I hear proper function and I have like a rage fit.
Yeah.
So correct thinking or correct stick throwing or correct
Function.
anything. These are all just specific cases of the more general idea of proper function, right?
Yeah, and by proper, do you think it means correct? Are those synonymous here? Just correct?
Well, I would probably use them synonymously, but I think basically what like it's all gonna hinge on how you mean those terms, because I think that, and we'll get into that because that this is like kind of going to be the crux of the whole thing. I think that basically, if when you use those terms, you're using them in a stance independent sort of way, or you're using a
Hmm.
stance independent notion of proper function or something like that, I'm going to probably not really understand what it actually means for something to be properly functioning. If we're using a stance dependent notion, though, then I think I'm going to be fine with it. And I think that I would say the conclusion, I think that the conclusion would be false if it's a stance dependent notion, because I think that, if I say I'm using this for this purpose, this is my purpose in doing something,
Yeah.
you probably don't disagree that there is. Do you have a problem with
Well,
that
hold
sense of
on.
purpose?
Yeah. Because inside the body, like if we said there's a proper way, there's a reason the hammer was created. It doesn't mean you can't use the hammer with or without the knowledge of why it exists for other things. You can use a hammer as a weapon. But the thing is, there's a purpose for it being used. Like a calculator, you could tape the calculator to your feet and use it as like some sort of sole of a pseudo shoe and walk around. The question is, inside the body, you no longer have this capability. You can't decide from your stance to use the liver in a different way than the liver inherently operates.
Well, let's try to kind of look at the actually, I guess we should find out if we really disagree about the conclusion. I think when you're saying there is no we want the conclusion to be there is no proper function. Do we want to just do it at the general level? Because I'll grant you, assuming you keep the sense of the word function the same, that you can, once you get that conclusion, you can derive all this stuff like what you
Yeah,
were reducing
yeah.
Dave with,
If
like your brain has no
Yeah,
purpose. There's no
yeah,
correct
yeah,
thinking.
yeah,
Sorry, there's no correct thinking or correct
yeah, yeah.
anything. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think that I need to understand how we're using the term, because that's going to affect what I think is true about that proposition that there is no proper function. So when you say proper function, are you talking, do you know what I mean when I kind of talk about stance dependent versus stance independent proper function?
Yeah, you're talking about a person with a position and evaluating the thing, and then coming to some determination, essentially, of uh, the conclusion that they're coming about the thing itself. So, isn't that essentially what it is? Like you're saying, it's dependent on my position. Like it's dependent on me um, taking a view on on this set of circumstances, and then from there, I'm concluding something about the set of circumstances.
Possibly, but the way you talk there is a little differently than how I would, so I'm not
Sure.
100% sure if I sign off on exactly that. When I talk
Okay.
about some kind of stance dependent proper function, maybe I have a stance where calculators are basically their proper function is to be used as insoles in shoes, and then so it's about whether the function that we see in some case aligns with my intention. Um, my
Oh, okay.
intention for how they
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
used.
Yeah. I would push back on that. I would say that would be a co-opted function of the calculator. The proper function would go back to what was the calculator made to do, is a different question than, like, does it exist? Is there an existence of the origin of this thing having a purpose in what it does? Is one question. Another question is, could you use it for something else that has nothing to do with that? Sure. But I don't think that would change the fact that a calculator is was created with intention to do a certain thing, and from that you can derive whether or not it's properly working. For instance, if you had two calculators and one executed accurate commands and outputs that were correctly concluding right from the premises 2 + 2 = 4, and all those were correct and they were logically coherent and consistent and all that, you would say, well, this is properly functioning. Let's say it was in the process of quality control. You would determine one didn't work. You wouldn't send it out to be sold. And the fact that the quality control worker could take the broken one that didn't work or one that works properly and duct tape it to their feet and walk around the calculator factory, and you couldn't actually deny that guy that he was using it for his declared purpose. But the fact that he has a new purpose for it, that he could apply a new purpose to co-opt what it is, doesn't really talk to whether or not the why it was created was for a purpose. Was it created with a purpose?
So when you said you're pushing back, I'm not sure if you're pushing back, because I'm just saying this is one way that someone might understand the term. So it's a meaning that someone could have. So my question isn't really if that's how you're using the term. I suspect that it's not, actually, based on everything you're saying. But I'm just confirming that you understand the stance-dependent sort of purpose. It's just it's basically someone's intention with something.
Yeah. Someone just arbitrarily, through their stance, applying a use for a thing, right? In that instance, you couldn't say they're doing it incorrectly or correctly from their position. They're just going, well, no, I'm just taking this thing. To me, it looks like a really good slipper, and I'm going to use it as a slipper. And but it doesn't change necessarily what that thing universally is.
Okay, so here's where it seems like we're at to me. We have this conclusion that there's no proper function, and it seems like you're not using proper function in a stance-dependent way. It seems like you're talking about some kind of stance-independent notion of proper function, as in we can talk about whether it's functioning properly without talking about the intentions of any kind of agent in using it.
That's why, Isaac, I'm actually wanted to move away from external objects, because they could be co-opted and sort of used for willy-nilly for anything. That's why I asked you the question inside of your body, because this argument is specifically not about any use. It's about biological mechanisms that do task-oriented things inside the body. You couldn't take a stance position, no matter what your stance was. You couldn't actually change what the liver actually does inside your body. Your will in the matter can't change these integral parts of the body and what they do. You can't make the heart do what the lung exactly does, and you couldn't make the liver do exactly what an elbow does, and so forth. So that's why I want to go inside the body, because this argument is specifically geared toward evolution and what goes on inside the body. It has little to do with whether or not human beings can pick up a stick, use it as a pen in the sand, or use it as a baton to hit their family members or whatever. The question is inside. Now, I think going internally inside the body, we get rid of the stance distinction here, because no matter your stance, the heart is still doing what the heart does. And the question is it possible from a strictly biological, deterministic view, ultimately, of evolution, is it possible to declare that the heart can incorrectly operate?
Okay, so I think we need a point of process, because you're asking me a thing, but what I'm trying to do is just understand the actual conclusion of the argument. And it sounds so this might turn into a thing where we're trying to go in different directions here. Just to say one thing about what you just said, I understand if certain cases of ostensive correct function, like using a stick or a calculator, are for whatever reason kind of like easier cases for the anti-proper function person to argue, and that you'd rather use things in the body or like maybe abstract things. Like I'm fine taking whatever case, because
abstract. No, I'm not. No, I deny the evolution view.
Then let me just take that off the table. Not abstract stuff. Let's just say things in the body, like the liver, the heart, something like that.
Yep.
So I'm just making a little point that I'm happy to talk about whatever kind of case you want. There's nothing where I need the easy case, but I'm still hung up on the same thing about the conclusion, which is just what it actually means. When you say something is properly functioning, if you don't mean that it's functioning in line with the intentions of some agent, hypothetical or real, then what does it actually mean to say that a thing is functioning properly?
To say the thing's functioning properly? Okay, so to say if so you're saying without a conditional, essentially.
Yeah, and so not a hypothetical norm, not like if you want to
Yeah,
grow tall, then you ought to eat your vegetables, just like you ought to eat your vegetables, full stop. It's like hypothetical and
yeah,
categorical norms. Sure.
yeah. So from the evolutionary view, those don't even exist, which is a different, like an additional argument I make, which is like, if evolution is true, um, you know, um, when you're a baby and all your organs are operating, right? You don't have the notion of what you want. You don't have the sense that you want your body to properly work. You don't have the sense or the evaluative processes to say, I wish my body would work because I want to live longer, right?
Do you understand what
You
I'm
don't
hung
have.
up on, though?
Yeah, you're
I
hung up
agree
on
that
this on the
it's
stance. Yeah, you're hung up on, you don't know what it means to say something's not properly functioning unless you have some sort of
even take away
say in the
the
matter.
not, even take away the not. I don't actually understand the concept of stance independent proper function. I'm not
Okay,
actually sure it's a coherent concept. So
okay,
just
let's
one
look at it
sec,
this way.
I'll let you go because the whole thing
Yeah,
is
yeah,
I want you to take as long as you want to
yeah,
explain it, and
sure.
you can ask me questions and stuff if that helps. But
Yeah.
the whole thing is that you have this conclusion. The conclusion is there's no proper function. And from
Mhm.
that, you're going to be able to derive all these things like, you know, there's not correct thinking, Dave's brain's not thinking correctly, blah blah blah. Um, I'm saying that I'm not actually clear what the conclusion that you're of your argument even means, because there's a concept that's being used in it, proper function, which I don't understand. So to me,
Okay.
the saying, just let me finish the sentence. To me, saying there is no proper function, that is currently, to me, with my understanding, no different than saying there is no glypharfalbarf. I don't know what it actually means to
Okay.
say that. Yeah.
Okay. So I would say you're in a type of performative contradiction then, because you assuming there is a way to understand something and not understand something. In this case, you're not understanding what it means to say the conclusion. That assumes that there is a particular set of rules that if they were in place, if they were properly in place, you would understand what's meant, right?
I'm not sure. I just don't understand the term. Like in the same way,
Okay, I'm
like
saying, hold on, Isaac, hold on. If you say you don't understand, then that supposes that there is the capability of understanding, right?
uh, as in like, do I understand things?
If
Like, do
you, Isaac, yeah, if you, Isaac, say, I don't understand this, does that not suppose that something could be understood?
yeah, I think that things can be understood. When you ask, does it suppose
Okay,
it? Okay, well, yeah,
hold
you
on.
can go ahead.
If you think something can be understood, doesn't it necessitate a precondition that things have a proper way of interacting and unfolding?
Is proper there being used in a stance independent sense?
It's an it no, yeah, actually, regardless of your
That's going to
stance,
raise the
it
same problem where
hold on, hold on,
yeah,
hold on a second. If
sure.
something can be understood, it necessitates that there's a correct method and a set of operations that something could be understood.
When you say correct there, though, that's with respect to stance independent proper function.
Regardless of your stance, if anything could be understood, because you believe along with me that there are some things we understand intuitively without our stance. Without having an opinion of the matter, we can digest and understand things even outside it. Let's say, like, maybe even in an involuntary setting, we can perceive regardless of our stance.
I don't really understand what perceiving regardless of
Can
stance
we
means.
understand anything about the external world regardless of us taking a stance on what it is we've gathered?
I feel like we're at cross purposes in how we're approaching the conversation. I feel like I'm
Well, I'm
just
just
trying to
yeah.
understand what the conclusion actually means. And it
I
sounded,
know.
I thought you were trying to kind of get me to understand what it means, but then it sounded like when you were trying to explain what the conclusion means, that you actually re-invoked the very thing I was trying to understand. It sounded like you said something like,
Yeah.
well, to not understand the conclusion, there has to be
Yeah.
some notion
Yeah.
of proper function that you're failing with respect. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's just re-invoking the word I don't understand the meaning of.
Well, I know, but to understand the meaning, whenever there was a case where you understood something, you've necessitated a methodology and a set of, let's say, operations that had to be the case for you to understand something.
Is that a question?
No, it's a statement. But do you agree with it? It can make it a question. For you to understand anything, there has to be a thing that becomes before that. That's a method and a set of operations. Using your mechanism you call your brain, in order for you to understand
sorry,
something,
just
the brain.
1 second. Just
Hold on, dude.
I just want to understand what's happening in the conversation. Are you trying to communicate to me what the term proper function means so I can evaluate the conclusion, or are we doing something else?
No. It's a meta for you to do a thing called.
Then it sounds like we're shifting away from the actual
It's the same
topic, though.
It's the same topic for you to evaluate.
Okay, but
Isaac,
I think we might be at cross purposes, though.
No, Isaac. For you use the word evaluate.
You understand that I'm trying to understand what proper function means in your conclusion.
Yes.
And are you trying to communicate what it means?
To communicate what something means, does it necessitate a proper...
Okay, I shouldn't have said you should ask me questions because it feels like you're being a bit unfair.
No. You just said evaluation. You're not letting me talk now. You're not letting me talk.
But okay, is it fair to say you're not letting me talk if you're not talking about the same thing as me?
I am talking about the exact same topic.
You're trying to get me to understand what proper function means.
For you to say something could be understood, and for you to say the word evaluate, that is to say, if someone communicates something to you and you do a thing called evaluating, for you to come to the correct conclusion about what you evaluated is to assume there's a correct way to evaluate, right?
And when you say correct there, that's stance independent correct function?
Yeah, regardless of what you think about
the concept that I don't understand.
Regardless of what you think post hoc of the matter, regardless of what you think, it's a requirement for you to evaluate anything. If it's the case that something can be correctly evaluated and incorrectly evaluated, right? For you to even come to a stance requires a mechanism that correctly and incorrectly works.
And when you say correctly there, is that stance independent correct function?
Yeah, isn't a function. Hold on.
If I say I don't understand what that means, right? Then you need to explain. Look, say Jimbob.
Sure.
Say that I say, "Hey Jimbob, are you a gefarfelbarf?" And you say, "I don't know what that means." And I say, "Well, for you to even know what a gefarfelbarf is, you have to know gefarfelbarf." And you're like, "Wait, but that's just re-invoking the thing I don't know the meaning of." So the whole problem is I need the concept communicated to me. You can't try to communicate it by re-invoking the very thing I don't understand.
Okay. Are there a set of operations that are required for you to even arrive at a stance?
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you mean there. Like, do some biological things have to happen? Like my brain has to work in a certain way?
Were you born with all of your stances?
No, I don't think I was born believing that you exist, for instance. That was something that I came to believe later.
You came to have a stance, but if the coming to a stance, even to say you have a stance, to even say that first statement, I have a stance of this, right? To even say that, what I'm saying is there has to be a stance independent set of operations for you to come to the conclusion that you have a stance.
What is a stance independent set of operations?
Your brain, the operation of your brain and its faculties operating in a certain way such that you can come to this experience, this declaration, this evaluation called I have a stance.
That seems right to me. I think that my brain has to do some stuff, but that's still not conveying the concept to me, though.
Well, hold on. If your brain, if your brain has to do stuff for you to develop a stance, then it has to do stuff in a very particular, correct way.
You did it again. You did it again. Correct, right there. What? Was that stance independent correct function?
Yeah, it would have to be.
But what does that mean?
It means that your brain has to operate in a certain way before you can develop a stance.
And is that certain way some kind of stance independent correct way?
If it preceded the stance itself, apparently, yeah.
And what does that mean?
It means that it's a precondition for stances.
That didn't communicate that sounded like a property about stance independent correctness. That didn't sound like the meaning of stance independent correct. I'm trying to understand what that means.
Wait. Is if something occurred, like for instance, let's give another example. For you to exist,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have a stance because you didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And would you say that the stance independent set of things for you to exist are the way in which the world operates, regularity of nature, biological realities of procreation, this kind of stuff? These are stance independent activities and operations, right?
I believe so. You're asking if there's some stance
Okay.
independent prerequisites for me to exist.
Okay. Yeah. So there
Yeah, to
are
be
the
clear, I
world.
don't have a trouble understanding stance independent things. I understand,
Okay.
for instance, my television. The problem is
Okay.
this
Cool.
idea of stance independent proper functions, stance independent
Okay.
correctness. These things I don't understand.
Okay. So you agree that there are necessary circumstances, states of affairs that need to be the case for you to exist.
Necessary, well, necessary gets a bit confusing, but yeah, like it maybe like some physical notion of necessity, like there has to be certain physical
Air.
processes for me in my current form to
Yeah.
be here. That seems right. Yeah.
Yeah. There has to be a history, right? Your parents have to have a history. And so it keeps going
There
back,
might be
right?
other
So,
ways for me to exist, but I get the general point that like there's some stuff that is not my stance that, that
yes.
stuff led to me being here.
Okay. So then you agree included in the list of things that are stance independent would be the way in which your brain operates.
I guess it depends exactly how you mean that, but I think I can grant something like that. Like what my brain is doing is not like, well, it gets kind of weird with your brain because is your stance and your beliefs, are those in some way like to do with your brain structurally? But like I think I can grant something like this just to be as charitable as possible. Like I think that, my brain has to be like there and doing stuff,
Doing any stuff or
doing specific things. But if by specific you mean stance independently correct things, I'm going to ask again what that means.
okay. So if your brain is just doing anything, right? Let's say your brain develops and you from because of the way your brain is, you develop a bunch of things that are stances that aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible?
Sorry, is it possible that my brain
Your
could do stuff such that I develop false beliefs?
Mhm.
Sure.
Okay, and that means that your brain has to do stuff to produce true beliefs.
Yeah, your brain has. Yeah, your brain. When we say has to do, we're kind of assuming a sort of like certain physical relationship with the brain and stuff like this. So I'm kind of granting all that. That's kind of fraught territory there. But yes, yeah, the brain has to be doing certain things for you to have beliefs that are true or beliefs that are false.
Okay. And in order to know that there could be true beliefs and false beliefs, in order to for that to be true,
Mhm.
there has to be some stance independent set of operations for your brain also.
By that, you just mean my brain has to be doing certain things that aren't contingent on my like opinion about them or something like that.
Yeah, like if your stance might be true, but your stance isn't identical to what is true. It could be true, but your stance is just something that gets produced by your brain from this view. Then the question is, for you to revise it, does that necessitate that a correct the right way, like the right way your brain has to be organized to produce to accurately apprehend the truth of the matter? Now we're getting to like truth apprehension. So it's no longer a set of stances, it's an examination of the stances. And if stances could be examined, but there's no proper way the brain functions, then there's no proper way to do logic.
When you say proper there, or correct, or right, is that stance independent proper function? Because again, I don't understand what that word means. This is the whole point I'm making.
Okay. Do you think there's a proper way to do logic? You're a logician.
When you say proper, do you mean stance independently correct?
To do logic? To do logic?
I'm not even asking about logic. I just mean when you ask that question, when you ask about logic, this or that or the other
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
when you
Regardless
say
of your
correct,
stance, Yeah, regardless of your stance, are the rules that are required to do logic, do they exist?
I'm confused about that. Are you asking about stance independent correct
Okay,
function? And if
here
for
here. Okay,
logic to
let's
yeah.
okay. We'll do it in a different way. You often coach people on their arguments and whether or not they're structured properly.
Mm-hmm. And
Is it
properly
just a
there is with respect to a stance.
Is it just your stance that they're structured properly?
When you say is it just my stance, just sounds like a kind of weird word. I don't know exactly what you're implying with
Well,
just,
well,
but
if it's
we have
okay,
some stance, actual or hypothetical, mine, theirs, and we say you're trying to do such and such. You can be in conformity with that stance or not, and that's what I would mean
okay.
when I say correct, right? So we might say the goal with math is to like follow this set of rules and do these things, and we look at math and we say you're doing math correctly when you are comporting with that set of rules, and you're not doing math correctly when you're not. That's a stance dependent notion of correctness. I understand that what you were calling
That's
the if, right? I understand the goal,
yeah.
the thing we're
Okay,
trying to
hold
do.
on, hold on,
Yeah.
hold on. Now go a little bit meta. When you make claims, definitive claims of what constitutes stance independent and not stance independent, is that now stance independent?
Is what stance independent?
To say that there's stance independent things and non-stance independent things.
Is it stance independent to do what? To verbalize something?
Okay, to make the claim there are stance independent things and non-stance independent things, right? We located a bunch, right? You have a stance. You needed your brain to operate a certain way to have a stance about things, right? But there are also a set of things that precede your existence that need to be the case that aren't stance independent.
Well,
So what I'm
just
asking,
I'm just I
I'm
do you want you I
I'm
just
asking,
don't know that you
dude,
understand what I'm stuck on.
dude,
I
dude,
just
I'm
want to
asking you
understand
a
the
question.
concept.
I'm asking you a question
Okay,
right now.
well, I'm gonna
Is
ask for a slight pivot, which is instead of asking me a question and it's putting you on the hotspot, okay? Convey to me what the concept means. Tell me what it means for something to be stance independently correct. Because we tried for a while there, maybe like 15, 20 minutes or something, trying to ask me questions, and I wasn't getting anywhere.
stance independent
Yeah.
would mean
No,
that
stance
it's
independent
correct,
correctness. Yeah. Or stance independent purpose. Yeah.
that it's correct, that is correct regardless of your opinion or your position on the matter.
Yeah, that does not compute to me because I think of correctness
Okay.
relative to
So
something
then
that
logic is relative then.
yeah, I think of logic, you have some set of rules and you
So
say
the
that
truth is relative.
just one
Yeah.
second. You have logic, you have some set of rules for like first order logic, propositional logic, whatever the logic is, and maybe you draw out some kind of inference, you do a deduction, and you can look at if it comports with those rules or not. That's a stance dependent notion of correctness. I
Is that
understand
true or
that.
is that hold on. That's what I'm asking a meta question about that statement now. When you say this is
But
a
why are you
stance
asking
into
me questions instead of
dude,
meeting?
dude,
Why don't
dude,
Jimbob? Why don't
listen.
you meet
Stop.
your burden instead
Listen.
of asking me questions?
Because you're the
So,
one
so
who's doing the pushback.
I'm gonna kind of put you on the hot seat and not be quite as friendly now. I'm gonna say
You
what I
you
want
just said
is
it.
for you to what I want is for you to communicate the concept to me so I can evaluate the initial proposition that there is no proper
Cool.
function. What does proper
Cool.
function mean? Stance independent proper function. That is your burden to convey that
Stance
concept.
independent. I told you what it means.
I didn't understand anything you said. This because
I
from my
said
point
it
of
has to
view,
be
yeah, my
logic.
suspicion, just to all cards on the
Dude, you're not
table.
letting me answer. You're not
Well,
letting me answer now. I
okay,
I would hold that logic, the laws of logic, the way they operate, their law-like status are stance independent. No matter what stance you take, you're affirming the laws of logic, right? So you can't take a stance. You can try to take a stance against the laws of logic or what proper use of logic is or what constitutes a valid argument. You could take a stance that no, that's not a valid argument. And what I'm asking is if there's
then don't
no
ask me a
nothing
thing.
that's
Don't ask me a thing.
okay
Remember
from your
your
position.
burden.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. From this position, the position that you just took, from your position, even the rules of logic and what constitutes a valid or invalid argument are stance independent. So they're not objectively the case true. Like you couldn't possibly say that a argument is invalid actually objectively. It's totally stance independent.
It sounds like you're trying to reductio me or something. What I'm asking is for you to meet your burden, which is to communicate to me what stance independent proper function means.
Stance independent proper function.
Yes, that's right.
And
all cards on the table here. My suspicion is that it's gibberish. That's my suspicion. What I want is for you to communicate it to me so that I go, okay, I get what it means, and I can look at the conclusion of your argument and find out if I agree with it or not. Yeah.
Proper function would be that reality operates and abides by the law of identity.
I'm not really sure what it means to say reality operates by the law of identity. So stance independent proper function is what that means is reality operates by the law of identity. That is the definition of stance independent proper function.
Yeah, if there was a way in which something was operating properly, independent of your stance.
That sounded like a proposition, though, because what I'm trying to understand is just the definition, like what it means, the meaning of the thing.
The meaning, it's the same meaning you would apply to argument, is to say that's dude, you're asking me a question, you don't let me answer.
Well, it's just because I want you to take it to the easiest level. I was just going to say that a 5-year-old kid was asking you, what does stance independent proper function mean?
Stance independent proper function would be something like, if I was teaching my kid math, right? There's a proper way to do math independent of my stance and the kid's stance. You're saying that there's no such thing as a proper way to do math. It's just a stance that you take that there's a proper way to do math, which itself is self-refuting.
Are you conveying what the term means right now?
Yeah, proper means it abides by the laws of logic. Like you can't say there's... Dude, look, you're basic.
Give me something I can substitute into the sentence.
I told you math.
Okay, wait.
I told you math. Is there a proper?
Okay,
is there a proper? Yes or no, dude? Is there a proper way to do math?
Okay, but now you're. I've already answered that, but just let's take the proposition
yes or no
that your argument is based on. Right? You want to say the conclusion of your argument is that, and I'm writing this down now. There is no.
That assumes a proper use of logic, dude.
Just wait a second. There is no proper function. So
you're affirming that there's a proper way of doing logic right now.
Calm down, man. I'm not like. Look,
no, it's frustrating.
I'm sure, and I'm not trying to.
You're writing. You're right. No, Isaac. You're writing
like you're gonna
down.
Rage out on me. I feel like this isn't gonna get unproductive.
Isaac, you're writing. Isaac,
I'm writing down your conclusion, and I'm asking
you. Writing
give me
down.
A synonym. Give me some way to understand what proper function means.
Isaac, you're assuming that there's
what I'm saying.
Isaac, right now you're writing premises as if there's a proper function of doing logic.
And what does that mean?
I don't know. You're the one writing it down.
Wait. To be clear, if you say you don't know, then that could be the end. You can say your conclusion is just talking about a word that you don't actually know.
It doesn't matter what the conclusion is because that assumes logic.
No, the conclusion is the thing that I'm trying to understand if I agree or disagree with.
Why would you try to understand something if there's no proper way to understand something, dude?
Instead of derailing by asking me a question, just
ask me the dude. All right.
I know it's frustrating to get.
If you're not going to answer the question I just said, if there's no proper way to understanding something, why are you trying to understand something?
Jimbob, if you're stuck,
you're not gonna. Okay, all right, it's okay. I'm done.
You're gonna run away.
You're not gonna answer the question.
It sounds like you're gonna run away right now.
Ask yourself. No. If you're running away by not answering this very clear question.
I've been asking the same question from the very start,
yourself,
which is this conclusion, there is no proper function, and I am asking you to explain what the words in that sentence mean so that I can understand it.
Holy shit. Explaining it means there's a proper way of understanding it.
Stance independently proper? As in you're re-invoking the very thing I'm asking you to explain?
Okay, so you're asking me to accurately...
Okay.
Dude, you keep interrupting. You're asking me to explain something to you so you could, quote, understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Does that require a proper methodology?
Don't ask me a question. Just explain what the term means.
if you can understand something that's coherent, right?
One of your
Right?
guys is typing up here. Can this?
Okay, just hold on a second, guys. Hold on, guys. So what I'm getting to is when you are trying to understand what I mean by something so that you could, quote, understand it, that assumes, right, especially considering you're writing premises down and you're trying to get into argument form, that assumes there's a proper way to convey an idea.
A stance independently proper way, as in you're re-invoking the term that I just asked you to explain the term?
Yeah. For instance, I'll give you an example.
Is there a way that you can explain the term without invoking the very term I don't understand?
I'll give you an example. An argument where the premises are true and the conclusion follows from the premises, right? Is it a stance dependent thing to say that that's a valid argument and a sound argument?
I told you I'm going to put my feet in the mud. I think that you're unfair with how you ask questions. So I'm not answering questions.
Oh my God, I'm done. I'm done. All right.
Okay,
it's okay.
Then
thanks for jumping on. I appreciate it.
You can't deal with the criticism.
No. You didn't give a criticism.
You want to deal with it.
A criticism assumes there's a proper way to think,
Jimbob,
dude.
I'm trying to understand what your conclusion actually means.
Can criticisms be valid?
You're trying to derail.
Okay.
You notice I've been on the same thread from the very start of the conversation.
Ask yourself. Right? You just said a criticism.
You have a conclusion. Don't try to derail. Don't try to ask me
You just said criticism.
Jimbob, look, you're in a corner. Okay, let's just be
No, I'm not.
here.
It's you in the corner, dude. You just said there's a criticism.
You've said
I'm not.
Your conclusion is there's no proper function. I have asked you if you can convey what that means. Just say no and we can end the conversation.
I did. I gave you
convey the
ask
meaning.
Yourself. I gave you an example.
Okay, and I did not understand the example to communicate any notion of stance-independent proper function.
Okay, cool. Stance-independent proper function would be...
Yes, please.
I gave an example, an argument that's valid and sound, right?
I don't understand how that communicated what stance-independent proper function is.
Okay, cool. Well, here's what I'm saying. For you to say that an argument could be sound, right, valid and sound, for you to say that that's possible means that there's a proper way to set up premises and a proper way to think and reason.
Did you just re-invoke the term proper in the very explanation?
So there is no proper form of an argument.
When you say proper there, when you try to reductio me like that, are you using the very concept I don't know the meaning of? You see the problem here, right? I don't see the problem. Use the very concept that I've told you I don't understand to explain the concept I don't understand.
So you don't understand that an argument, whether or not it's valid or not, or sound, is something regardless, that needs to be the case regardless of someone's stance.
It sounds like you're asking me a question instead of communicating what stance
I just communicated whether or not
don't ask
an
me a
argument.
Question. Give me.
I'm telling you. I'm literally telling you whether or not someone's stance, whatever someone's stance is irrelevant to whether or not the rules of logic apply to a valid argument.
When we talk about a stance, you can have the stance can say
you didn't refer. You're not answering what I just said. I just said something, right?
The case that you just mentioned with logic, right?
What did I just say?
Just 1 second. I'm explaining how that very case I understand in a stance-dependent way. I can't repeat what you said verbatim. It sounded roughly like you were trying to say that there's some kind of rules for determining when logic works, and those are irrespective of any stance. But the rules are the stance, Jim. When you say here's this set of rules, and logic is correct when it's in conjunction with them.
No, you contradicted yourself. I'll tell you how.
So
I'll tell you how.
Why don't instead of you saying that you communicate?
No. I will.
Doing so much to get away from meeting your burden.
Ask yourself. You're interrupting me.
Yeah, I am interrupting you, and it's because you're not meeting your burden. You contradicted.
You contradicted yourself.
I don't care.
The reason
I doubt it, but I also don't care. What I want is for you to actually convey the meaning. So don't try to go to some other. Yeah. Okay. You're conveying right now what stance-independent proper function means.
Be quiet.
Don't tell me to be quiet. Don't talk to me like a child. You're the one who can't fucking communicate your own concept.
If you can't stop throwing a tantrum right now.
Have we got the...
Ask yourself, just said a couple minutes ago that there are a set of preconditions for him to come to a stance. That means the stance independent Reality, for him to come
and
to a
we've got the
stance,
dodging.
needs to
The
exist.
dodging has begun.
I argue that that set of operations,
Oh my.
right, for him to come
How
to a
long
stance
will
at
he
all,
ramble
it
on and
requires
on
the
before
law of identity, it
communicating
requires
what
the regularity
concept
of nature, it
actually
requires
means?
reality to be a
Jimbob
certain
has
way,
given
right?
a
He just
proposition.
said
The
the rules
proposition
are
is
the
that there is
stance.
no proper function. And now we're trying to understand
He just
what the
said
fuck
the
that
rules, the
actually
laws of
means.
logic are the stance.
And
No,
instead of
you
explaining what he
can't
means, he's
come to a
rambling
stance
on and on.
without first
He's
assuming the
asking me
laws of logic
questions.
already
He's
exist,
trying to drop
right?
reductios or something. I have
That's the
absolutely no
reality.
idea.
Now he's running away from it because he doesn't
Test,
want me to
test,
talk about
hello,
this problem
hello,
here.
hello, hello,
If it's the case
hello,
that
hello,
a reality has to
hello.
exist that's stance independent, and that
Can we
reality
get
is
some
governed by the laws of
non-dodging
logic, and that
engagement
arguments
here?
themselves are governed by the
Any
laws of logic.
non-dodging
For him to say,
engagement?
no, the rules of the
Any
laws of logic
non-dodging
are
engagement?
the stance.
Test, hello,
He
hello,
said they are
hello,
the stance. The stance
hello,
is the laws of logic. No, that's not a stance.
hello, hello,
The laws of
hello,
logic need to
hello,
exist
hello,
for you to
hello,
develop a stance.
hello,
You admitted that. Now you just
hello,
went back on that.
hello,
I'll give you the
hello,
last word.
hello, 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 hello. Am I there?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, so now we've reached the stage where Jimbob is abusing the mute button, going on rambles, because this is the basic dialectic that happened here. He has deployed some kind of argument. The conclusion is that there's no proper function. I've determined by talking to him that what he means there is stance-independent proper function. We've tried to understand what that means. He seems to only be able to ask me questions, to try to, I don't know, do reductios or something, but he won't actually communicate what the term means. And when he does try to, he just reinvokes the very term I don't understand the meaning of. So unless you've got some way to actually get the concept into my head, I'm not even sure that the conclusion of your argument is a proposition. That is your burden, Jimbob, is to communicate what stance-independent proper function actually is, and to do so without reinvoking the very thing that no one understands what the fuck you're talking about when you say proper function.
Yeah. Well, like I said, for you to come to a stance at all...
Are you communicating what the term means right now?
You're interrupting again.
Yeah,
dude.
I'm trying to make sure that you're meeting your burden instead of rambling.
So in order to come up with a stance at all, your brain has to...
Are you communicating what the term means right now?
The term
That's a
proper?
yes/no question. Are you communicating what stance-independent proper function means?
Proper stance-independent function. I already told you.
No, that's the Jimbob. I've been trying to understand that for how long have we been talking? For the last 1 hour and 8 minutes, I have been trying to understand what stance-independent proper function means so that I can evaluate the conclusion of your argument. That's what I'm asking you to do, is to communicate to me what it means.
For any specific thing?
I'm just asking you what the term means. When you say the term, you mean something. What do you mean?
So let's take an example. So to say your the proper stance-independent function of your liver is to process toxins in the body. It means that it fulfills its task.
And
what it's there to do.
Its task, that's like the if in a conditional statement, right? It's like, here's this thing. We assume just let me finish. We assume a point of view, actual or hypothetical, where there is some goal, and we say whether a thing achieves that or not. So if the goal, if we're taking a stance where say the goal is to pump blood, then we can say, oh, the heart is functioning correctly with respect to that goal or not.
No, dude, stop. The heart doesn't have a goal. A heart is an organ. A liver doesn't have a goal. That assumes a stance. So you're saying that it's
functioning properly, not with respect to any goal, right?
Yeah, I'm
demonstrating.
Ask yourself. I'm demonstrating that a liver has a task and it fulfills its tasks, and a heart fulfills.
No. When you say it has a task, that, to be clear, I understand what you mean if you're talking about we take some stance, right? Actual or hypothetical stance where we say the goal is to filter toxins.
No, that's not a goal.
What do you even mean?
Stop saying goal, bro. How can you say as a
you want to call it a task? I'm fine calling it a task. Wasn't that your language?
Bro, shut up for a second.
How about actually engaging with the person who like knows?
Shut up for a second, dude.
It
So
sounds.
when you're a
Why are you asking me to shut up when you're the one with the
up,
inferior
dude.
knowledge here?
When
Jim
you're
Bob,
a baby,
I'm not gonna be talking
and
to you
your
like a bitch.
organs
Hello?
are in
Have you muted me?
operation, regardless of your
Yeah, here
opinion
we
or
go.
stance on the matter, your
This is
organs
what you gotta
fulfill
resort
dedicated
to. This is what you
tasks
gotta
in the
resort
body,
to
dude.
when you can't actually engage.
Are you going to say that
Test,
no,
hello?
they don't?
Can I be heard? Am I muted?
Are you going to say that?
muted?
Are you going to
Am
say
I
when you're
muted?
born with
Can
all
I
these
be
organs
heard?
that do
Test,
specific
hello?
things in the body,
Hello?
right?
Can
Very
I be
complex
heard?
tasks.
Can I be heard?
You're going to
Am I
say
there?
that
Test.
that's
Hello?
no, that's just a stance.
Hello?
They don't actually do that.
Test. Am I there? Can you hear me? Test. Hello?
All right.
Hello? Can I be heard?
Anyone else want to talk to him?
Can I be heard?
It's unbearable.
Can I be heard? Can I be heard?
It's unbearable.
Have I been muted? What's going on here?
Yeah, dude. If you keep talking, I'm going to mute you.
You can hear me. Okay. Jimbob, look,
okay,
if you're
now we can't hear
you. If you're gonna just abuse the mute button because you can't hang, that's fine. Just run away.
It's not. No, you're interrupting, dude.
Look. Do you understand what the fuck I'm asking you? You're starting to irritate.
That requires a proper function.
Oh, the very thing I'm asking you to explain the fucking meaning of that you can't seem to communicate. Do you think that's useful to me? Hey, Jimbob, do you understand what I'm saying? No, that requires a glypharful barf. The fuck's that supposed to mean?
Can a heart improperly function before you have a stance?
Are you asking me if there is a stance-independent notion of improper heart function?
Yeah.
I don't understand what that means. You're asking me if something has the very thing you haven't communicated the meaning of.
So
your burden is to communicate what it means.
When you're an embryo, is there a proper path for development?
When you say proper, are you just re-invoking the very concept I don't understand?
Okay, well, let's do it without proper.
Do you see the problem?
When you're an embryo, is there a developmental path?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a correct or incorrect pathway?
When you say, what do you think I'm going to say, Jimbob? What do you think I'm going to say?
I'm asking you.
What do you think I'm going to say?
You're going to ask me a question back. I'm asking you.
Yeah, and you understand it's valid to ask a question back if I don't understand what the fuck you're asking me, right?
So,
do you think there's a glypharful barf pathway, Jimbob?
So you don't know.
No, don't ask me a question back. Do you think there's a glypharful barf pathway?
It's just nonsense, dude.
That's nonsense. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
So this is exactly what the argument ends up being, right? If you hold the position that in the embryonic stage of development, given that there's markers, right? Markers of when an arm develops, when the spine develops, when and where things develop, right? The question I'm asking the evolution proponent, because it's internal, right, is there a correct way these things develop? Is there a correct way? I'm asking from the evolution proponent. Ask yourself, not actually taking on the evolutionary view. He's taking on his own philosophical view and asking me a question back. What I'm asking is, from the evolutionary view, is there a correct or incorrect way in which something develops? Are there targeted pathways?
Am I there?
Right?
Can I be heard?
That's what I'm asking.
Can I be heard? Am I there?
He's saying, I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what you mean by, I don't know, a DNA marker telling the embryo when it grows an arm, when it grows a leg.
Can I be heard?
Right?
Test. Hello.
I don't know what you mean by whether or not my eyes are properly functioning. I don't know what you mean, doctor. Can you imagine ask yourself, went to the doctor? Hey, doctor. He's like, dude, you got a serious problem. You know, your eyes aren't properly functioning. Well, it really, I don't know what you mean by properly functioning. Do you mean that?
Can I be heard?
Are you actually assuming that a proper function of my eyes is to interpret light and sense data from the external world and then process it to my brain?
Can you hear me, Jimbob? Test. Hello.
Through some sort of conceptual. Yeah, he's just.
Can you hear me? Wait, can you hear me?
You know, like. That's what you have to say.
I've been muted.
So the question is, if your heart doesn't have a proper function, and if you don't know what it means, like he thinks this is like some sort of good position. If you don't know what it means to say your brain is properly functioning,
I'm surprised
then
anyone would try
you
to do
even
something
saying
like
I don't know what it means assumes something that you don't even know what it means. That's what's so nonsensical and it's like sophistry, dude.
Hello. Can I be heard?
To say I don't understand what you mean is to affirm the thing that I'm asking you to understand, which is
hello. Oh,
you need a way to say I understand or I don't understand.
Hello, can I be
Is
heard?
my brain properly functioning or not? He's saying what? Stands independent? What is it? What do you mean? A stance independent view?
Test. Test,
No,
test.
a
Hello?
stance itself requires
Hello?
a
Hello?
whole set of
Hello?
preconditions, dude.
Hello? Hello? Can I be heard?
It doesn't make any
Can I be
sense.
heard? Can you hear me? Test? Hello? Hello? Test? One, two, three. Can I be heard?
Oh yeah, now you
Test?
can be heard.
Okay. So again, Jimbob, you have a conclusion. The conclusion has a term in it. I don't understand what the term means. Can you communicate what the term means without reinvoking the term I don't understand the meaning of?
The term proper.
No, the term proper function, stance independent proper function.
I told you the term proper
You,
in this sense means it adequately fulfills its task.
okay, and when you say its task, when you say something has a task, what is a stance
It
independent task
executes
supposed to be?
executed commands.
When executed commands. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean? Let me make sure that I understand what you're communicating. So
Uh-huh.
when we say that the heart is functioning properly when it beats, how explain to me how that works with stance independent correct function?
Before you have a stance, your DNA and your body instructs your body how to work. And so there's an instruction manual of what the heart does, where the heart is, how the heart does what it does, and it's instructed by a set of commands.
And you're saying that it's fulfilling a task, right?
Yeah, the task would be associated to the command. So you could say it's fulfilling what it's determined to do from the biological position.
When you say a task, that sounds to me like the same kind of thing we're talking about when we talk about a stance, right? We might say that the task of logic is to comport with certain rules, or your task when picking up the stick is to throw it at someone, or the task of the heart is to pump blood. I understand a stance dependent notion, but your notion is supposed to be one where we can say that it's functioning properly without mentioning a task.
Wait, no, wait, hold on, because we don't declare the task for the heart.
I don't know what you mean by we declare. We take a frame of view, hypothetical or real, where we say this
What?
is the task, right? Do
No,
you
no,
have
no. What we know, no, no, no. What we know about biology and genetic instruction, it's not us going, oh, the task of the heart for the body, the task of the liver for the body, or the vestibular system. The task is to keep equilibrium for the vestibular system. That means that the task is there are very fine electrofibers that are super hypersensitive that keep us balanced while we walk. What I'm asking from the evolutionary view is that an incidental thing that task that is that an actual task that's happening, or is that an incidental nominal thing that keeps happening?
it sounds like you're asking me a question again, but let's just trace
Yeah,
through
you're
the
supposed to be
dialectic. Just
you're
just
supposed
I
to be
asked what it
taking on
means,
the
and
evolutionary view, bro.
wait a second. It sounded like when I asked what proper function means, which has been the whole thing I've been getting at this whole time to try to
Fulfills.
understand your proposition,
Yes.
it
Yep.
sounded like you gave a stance dependent notion where we
No.
understand correct function
Yep.
relative to some kind of task that it's completing or not. That's a stance dependent notion. If you want to
No, no,
proceed
no.
with
Because
that notion, then we can
no.
go to the argument.
No, no, no. It's not stance dependent because, like I
Then why
said,
are we
these
talking about
biological.
task?
Because, dude, these biological realities need to precede us coming to stances. You already admitted this.
I think that there's some confusion about like you keep mentioning us and coming to stances. When I say actual or hypothetical, I mean when we talk about something functioning correctly,
Uh huh.
the way that we speak about that is it functions correctly if it achieves a certain goal or task. If you want to say task, that's a stance dependent notion. And I'm fine with a notion like that, but then I think your argument's going to have a different kind of problem. So to be clear,
Oh,
when you say proper function, you mean that it's accomplishing a task, and we have some hypothetical point of view where we assign a task to it?
no, no, no. I'm saying in biology, the biology itself assigns the task. And so if it's true that a DNA marker determines when, how, and where an arm develops in the embryonic stage, right? If that's the case, that's independent of our stance that occurs.
I think there might be some confusion around the idea of like our stance. To be clear, when you say that
Holy shit, dude.
when you say that it's accomplishing when the heart is working correctly, it's because it's achieving some task. That the idea there is there's a task like to keep the organism alive or to move blood throughout the body or something like that. And to function properly is to do that thing, to meet that goal, to achieve that task, right?
Yes.
That's
so
a stance-dependent
sense,
notion. Yes, that's stance-dependent.
no. The thing. Hold on a second. I'm trying to understand what you're categorizing here.
Yeah.
The reality is, let's go back to the embryo. The reality is there's DNA, there's information, there's markers in the process of development in the embryo that determine when, where, and how an arm is developed. Just first of all, just do you agree with that?
Again, I'm not going to humor the question asking stuff. The whole
All
thing
right,
is
dude,
I want you to communicate.
if you're not going to fucking talk, if you're not going to talk
I'm not
and
gonna
have a
be
conversation,
derailed, no.
that includes questions, dude.
No, it's you have a term that you're using,
which
is proper
wait, when I asked for
when I asked a
clarifying,
and it
holy
sounded
shit, dude.
just let you talk. You went on and on with me muted.
No.
So maybe you let me talk.
I'm asking you a clarifying question, dude.
Just 1 second. I asked what it means.
Holy
Proper
shit.
function. It sounded like you gave a stance-dependent notion. It sounded like you were giving a notion for biological function, where to function properly is to achieve some task, as you put it. That is a stance-dependent notion of proper function.
I understand what you're trying to say, but the thing is, what I need you to understand and I want to know that you understand this. Before we have stances, isn't it the case that DNA and the biological reality tells us by marker systems when, where, and how an arm develops?
When you say before we have stances, it sounds like you're talking about
dude,
the human has to like conceptualize or something like this. The point is just look at how you use the language, right? When you say
you're not answering my question, dude.
No,
is it the case?
I'm obviously not going to answer a question when I'm trying to.
All right, then get out of here.
Yeah,
get out of here, dude.
Away,
you're a worm.
If
you're not going to answer a basic question, I'm asking from the evolutionary view, which this argument is geared toward.
Test. Can I be heard?
If it's the case that biology itself
have I been muted?
Sets markers.
Have I been muted
for where, when, and how?
Again? Yeah, great.
An arm develops.
Test. Hello.
If that's the case,
can I be heard? Test. Hello.
Right?
Hello. Test.
You're saying,
can you hear me?
Yeah, that's true. I'm not going to answer that
hello,
question. I'm not going to
hello,
actually just give you the yes that that's true.
Hello, test.
Right?
Can I be heard?
If that's true, there is a
Test,
place and a time, according to biology, where, when, and how an arm develops. Arms, legs, brains, everything in the system. If there is a place and time where that occurs.
I think he thinks that he's going to
from the evolutionary view
by doing this. I'll just sit here all day doing this.
Could they say that was there is a proper view? Yes, from their stance. Ask yourself. From the evolutionary stance, could they say that there's a proper? You're actually making my argument for me. It sounds like you're saying.
Test.
If the evolutionary view is itself a stance that comes after
1, 2, 3.
the reality of biology,
can I be heard? Is
then
the mute abuse
that
over
they can't
yet? Can
objectively say there's a correct way anything happens, right?
Hello. Test. Hello. Can I be heard? Test. Hello. Can I be heard? Can you hear me? Test. Okay, great.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so there is no proper function. This is the conclusion of your argument. I've asked you what proper function means. It sounded like the notion that you just gave was a stance-dependent notion, because it sounded like to function properly is to achieve some kind of task. Right?
So if it's let's say it's stance-dependent,
yes,
and the evolutionary view is stance-dependent.
Let's say. I'm asking if that's how you mean the term when you use it.
Internally to the evolutionary view.
Then you're wait 1 second. Then we're backtracking to literally the start of the conversation. So when we went through all that stuff about the calculator and all of that shit, it sounded like the road that you took at that point was that you're going to communicate a stance-independent notion of proper function. Now, we talked for quite a while, and where we actually came down to was you using a stance-dependent notion?
No, I'm granting it now. I'm granting it now.
And I'll come around to it. Where proper function is about achieving some kind of task, right? So now, if we're using a stance-dependent notion, I'm going to say that the conclusion that there's no proper function is false, because trivially you can come up with infinite stances according to which something is doing is meeting a task or goal.
Yeah, and none of them would be the proper one.
But now you're reinvoking stance independent proper function, aren't you?
That it doesn't exist. Yeah.
Wait,
that it just doesn't exist.
Wait a second.
Dude, you just talked. You just talked for that. Hold on. Do I have to mute you again? Okay, hold on. I'll just mute you.
Just be clear about which sense you're using.
You can't layer all that on me and then just not let me respond.
Hello.
You can't put all that on me and not let me respond.
Just please
That's
wait a second.
Don't gish gallop.
Just wait a second.
No, because we have to remember what you said, dude.
When you say stance, when in the conclusion of your argument, there is no proper function. Let's be clear about where you're at now, because if you've come around to using it in a stance-dependent way, that's fine with me. I won't even, you know what? I won't even frame it as you coming around to it. Perhaps you haven't thought about the difference between the two, and you've realized through this conversation, wait, actually, stance-independent proper function is, I don't even know what the fuck that is. I think about proper function in terms of tasks. So actually, that is a stance-dependent notion. So
cool.
That's fine. Right. But
I'm granted.
But wait,
let
me get to where I'm going. So now, if that's being used in a stance-dependent way, the conclusion, it seems to me, is going to be false, because we can say, well, wait, there is stance-dependent proper function. We can come up with infinite stances, hypothetical or actual.
No.
And if you respond to that, I heard your response to that, so let me deal with your response.
Fuck, dude. What did I say?
Yeah, it sounded like when I said that last time, you said, but only one of them is proper, which sounded like
I didn't say that.
Proper function.
I didn't say that, dude.
Okay, so then what's your reply to when I say...
If you stop talking, I will give it to you.
I'm not going to stop until I'm sure that I've actually communicated my point correctly.
Shut the fuck up, dude.
Jimbob, look, you getting stuck and having trouble dealing with someone who's more competent than you.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm saying shut up. It's just fucking annoying. Don't do that to me.
Okay.
Look.
Stop crying for a second.
No one's crying. There's dodging happening, certainly, but there's not crying.
You're not letting me respond.
Just then stay on the tracks, because for you, respond means talk about another thing.
You're not letting me respond.
Just stop cutting me off so that I can keep things on the tracks.
That's rich. That's rich.
Yes, I have cut you off many times. Do you think that I don't acknowledge that? The reason I'm cutting you off is because you're not staying, as far as I can tell, on the point. Wrap it up at exactly the speed I want to. You can mute all you want, and then I will be here whenever you're done.
Stop the meta. Stop the meta. Just
I'm going to do exactly what I want in this conversation. You can complain all you want. When you complain, when you say stop blabbing, when you say can you do this and that, that just extends how long I go for. So if you want me to not go for as long, don't say those things.
So hostage taking.
Hostage taking again. Same thing. You're just extending how long I talk for when you do that. So just stop with okay. So when you say there's no proper function, I'm asking what sense that's being used in stance independent or stance dependent. It sounded like for most of that conversation, you were going to say stance independent. Now, it sounds like after a while, we've determined that actually it's a stance dependent notion, because proper function is relative to a task. But then the conclusion is false, because of course there are functions relative to tasks, like the shoe sole calculator thing. Yeah. So what's the response to that without re-invoking stance-independent proper function, which is what it sounded like you did the first time?
Now you changed what you said a little bit, because what you said before, ask yourself, is if it's the case that all of these things are stance-dependent, there is no stance-independent proper function. People can craft their own arbitrary goals, and those could be the new functions that they're using, right? They're not proper, they're just arbitrarily defined, right? But you use the word proper. If it's the case that all of these things are stance-independent functions, stance-independent, there is no such thing as proper at all. There's no such thing as it at all. Not even the one you're saying where people can develop, like you wouldn't say strapping the calculator to the foot is the proper way to use it. It's just one arbitrary way to use it. It's not proper, it's not improper, it's just one way of doing it, right?
But it sounds like you're just saying you agree with that there is stance-dependent proper function, which means the conclusion is false if that's the sense you're using the term in.
Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? I just said not proper.
Stance-dependent proper function? We cleared up that concept earlier.
No, it can't be proper if it's totally arbitrarily but depending on the person. It's not proper.
Let's just slow down. In the conclusion,
Why would it be proper?
Just 1 second. In the conclusion, when you say there is no proper function, you told me that that's a stance-dependent notion, and it has proper in it. But now you're saying that you can't be proper, or that you're not talking about proper function. So
there wouldn't be proper function.
Wait. When you say this conclusion, there is no proper function. When you use proper function there, is that stance-dependent or stance-independent proper function that you are referring to?
There's neither. Both, neither.
Oh, but I need to know what you're referring to. If you like,
no, the word prop, like, look, I'm granting you something. The word proper from this view isn't objectively a thing. There's no such thing as proper, right? That's what I'm saying. And you asking me, what does proper mean? I don't know what you mean by it. Let's say I don't know what anyone means by it. And under the evolutionary view, it's a totally ambiguous thing under the evolutionary view that something's properly functioning.
Just to be clear, so you're saying that you are using a stance-dependent notion of proper function in that conclusion or not?
Yeah, it's a stance-dependent view,
okay,
right?
And
that's something
you understand that there is stance-dependent proper function. Like when I use the calculator for a sole in my shoe, that is a stance-dependent proper function for a sole.
No,
for a calculator.
No.
Okay, then we need.
Why would it be proper? No, hold on. What makes that proper as opposed to just another way to use the calculator?
Proper in the context of stance-dependent function is it being aligned with a given task, goal. That's all it means.
It's just proper to the goal.
That's right. Yes.
So it aligns, when you say proper, it just aligns with the goal.
That's right. Yeah. Goal, task, whatever you want to call it.
So in order to think properly, you have to use your brain in a certain way.
But just instead of asking, I want to be clear.
Oh, fuck, dude, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay,
I'm using the same.
If you want to run away, go for it.
You're running away, you little prick.
I'm sitting here.
I just asked you totally parallel to what you just established.
How tall are you? I'm probably taller than you.
And now you're running, you little freak.
I'm right here, and I'm not a freak. I'd be happy to go back.
You're the one running. I literally just used your position, and I go, let's shift that over to thinking then. Is there a proper way to use your brain, given that you want to come to true conclusions?
Hello.
And you're like, instead of asking me questions, get the fuck out of here, dude.
Abuses it just kind of counts against
you little weasel.
Can I be heard? Test. Hello.
Fucking worm.
Can I be heard? Test.
Get out of here.
Test.
Get out of my Discord.
If you want to kick me, that's fine. Go for it. I was just going to continue with the discussion.
You're not wanted.
It's okay. It sounds like you're saying that
dirty little gibbon.
Okay. Well, look, I'm just going to keep trying to make the point. You can kick me if you want to, but it seems like we have this sentence. The conclusion of your argument says.
It's just so bad faith. It's just incredible. It's like he's the one who developed this. I realized, if I just grant him this, it's the same position. It doesn't matter.
Hello.
I'm not arguing my position that the world, from a Christian view, has a proper. These things have proper function. What I'm arguing is that from the evolutionary view, there is no such thing.
As it takes.
He agrees with me.
So we'll see. Because if anyone runs away, it's not going to be me.
He agrees.
Can you hear me? Test,
there is no such thing.
Test. Hello.
But as soon as I use the example.
Hello. Test,
he goes, no, I'm not answering that question.
Test,
man,
hello.
It's my party.
Hello. Can I be heard? Test. Test. Hello.
A total fair question, dude.
Test. Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
Can you hear proper
me? Can you hear me?
Means.
Test. Hello. Can I
how
be heard?
I use the calculator.
Hello.
However I want to use the calculator.
Hello, can I be heard?
The calculator to my goal, right?
Test. Hello.
That's proper.
Hello.
So. It's a totally fair question, dude.
Hello. Test.
If proper is given by a goal,
test.
If you have a goal to come to true conclusions using logic, is it only proper because someone wants to come to true conclusions? Is it only a stance that there's a proper way to think? This is why he didn't want to answer these questions. He didn't want to answer the question because
okay, can I be heard? Hello.
Proper thinking is more than just a stance.
Test. Hello.
Then
can I be heard?
You have a problem here because if evolution holds that the mind they don't even have a mind, the brain developed incidentally, then it didn't incidentally. It can't incidentally produce its proper use, right?
Test. Oh, can I be heard? Hello. Test. Test. Can I be heard? Hello?
It's literally this is exactly what I'm trying to reflect. And he did it perfectly. And he's like, no, I didn't.
Hello.
I'm not going to answer that.
Hello.
I'm not going to
Hello.
answer that
Can I be
question. Well,
heard?
yeah, the
Test, test,
reason
test,
you're not going to
test,
answer that question is because
test.
it actually
Toast.
demonstrates exactly what I'm trying to do.
Test.
Okay.
Hello? Hello? Can I be heard?
You don't know what proper means.
Test. Test. Test my mic. Can I be heard?
If you
Hello?
talk in the Discord, it will play. Yeah,
Hello?
you guys, if he
Hello?
wants to talk to other
Hello?
people, that's fine. I bet he won't,
Hello?
though.
Hello? 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 Test. Can I be heard? Are you there now? Test?
Yeah, yeah. Someone else can
Test. Okay,
have a go with.
wait. Yeah. So just to
Someone
be
else can talk
clear,
to him. If you want.
I mean, for the record, I do generally like Jimbob. I don't know if you can hear me right now, but I don't mind shifting back to being polite with each other after this. I find you kind of frustrating to debate. But it's nothing personal. I'm just going to stand up for myself in a discussion. So where I'm at with this problem here, and what it seems like Jimbob is kind of stuck on, we're going. His conclusion to his argument is there is no proper function. I'm trying to understand what he means by proper function. For a lot of the conversation, it sounded like he was going to use a stance-independent notion of proper function. That's a concept that I don't understand. That's like saying there's a Jafarfelbarf to me. I don't know what it means, right? So I'm just going to ask what it means. And if you reinvoke the concept that I don't know the meaning of to explain what it means, well, that's obviously not going to get anywhere. Like, how can you possibly explain something to someone by just reinvoking the very thing they don't understand? Now, after a while, it sounded like Jimbob actually went, okay, wait, no, it is a stance-independent notion because I'm talking about things accomplishing tasks or not, right? The heart is functioning correctly if it accomplishes the task of sending blood around the body or something like that. And I said, okay, that's fine. Well, now we're on the same page of it where the argument seems to be using a stance-dependent notion of proper function. But if that's the case, well, then it seems like the conclusion is actually false because when we can trivially think of tons of functions that things could have, that's just to say that there are tasks that things could accomplish, the calculator can achieve the function of computing, or I can achieve the function of yelling with Jimbob in Discord. Oh, see, I told you he'd be the one to run away. I am happy to talk to Jimbob fans. I also will start from fresh with any of you, so I don't need to be yelling at each other. Got a bit heated with Jimbob, but if any of you guys want to talk now, and I will say respect to you all for not piping up and clobbering me with a dog pile in the conversation. I do appreciate that. I think that's good form.
For the 1v1s, it's more, it seems we don't want it to look unfair.
I think the muting was a bit unfair, but I agree all you guys were very fair with the not dogpiling. So I do like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So can I ask you a question? Ask yourself.
Sure.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Do you also go by the name online of Synth?
No, I do know Synth.
Or is that a different guy?
Yeah, Synth is a different person.
Oh, okay.
I like Synth though, and I think on some things we have similar views.
Okay, I was just curious because I'd seen a picture that looked similar to yours on like old Crucible backlogs. I just said Synth versus this person.
I don't think I look much like Synth.
No, I'm saying just the picture. I just remember it being like a kind of like a cartoony drawing.
Oh yeah, that could be the case. I do have the cartoon, yeah.
But okay, so how do you know when your car is not functioning properly? There's really no other way to ask that.
Well, I mean, I think that, for instance, it might not start, or it might I was on the highway with my buddy Richard the other day, and the motorcycle, the exhaust came off and it started sounding extremely loud. That seems like it's not functioning properly.
Okay, so we know when something's not behaving correctly, or it's not doing what it's supposed to do.
There are cases like that, yeah. I mean, just to be clear, you have to have some kind of point of view, hypothetical or actual, that assigns a task to the thing. And then you can say, relative to that task, whether it's accomplishing it or not. So I might not, have a task in mind when talking about, some particular thing happening out there. But with the car, I certainly do. With the car, I think proper function is probably about it getting you around and not crashing. And yeah, I mean, I think we have similar expectations of a car, probably.
Okay, so I actually like what's his name? Justin Needham over here in the side put in the side chat, which he actually I think he did a fairly good job defining the term, which would be a function of causality or mode of being, which neutrally accomplishes a certain task or function.
Yeah, it seems like I haven't been reading the side chat, but I heard task come up there, so it sounds like a stance dependent notion. And I just want to say there's nothing like anti-Christian or that, like, you could be a religious person and not believe in any weird stance independent stuff. Like, none of this is, I don't know if you guys think that somehow Christianity boxes you into like really weird metaphysics about proper function, but it doesn't. You could talk just like his definition there, where you talk about some task. Like, yeah, I mean, to function properly is to accomplish some task. That's what we
Well, would
mean.
you agree that any event would either be accidental or intentional?
Accidental or intentional. I'm not sure if I'd have to think about if that's a strict
Uncaused or
dichotomy or not.
caused? Do you agree that any event would be either caused or uncaused? It can only be one of the two.
Yeah, that, because that's a strict dichotomy. It's like it's either caused or
I
it's
think
not the case
accidental
that
or
it's caused.
intentional is basically saying the same
It,
idea.
it,
It's
it might
either.
it might be. I just, those aren't as obvious with the language. It's not like
I
thing or
agree. It's
not
not
things.
as obvious,
But I'm not trying to be Weasley about it. Like, I just have to think about if those words basically just map onto a strict
no, I
dichotomy or
agree with
not.
you that
Yeah.
it's not as intuitive of being like just a perfect one-to-one.
Mhm.
But so if everything is either uncaused or caused, and if you are, let's say, the atheist who believes in the theory of evolution, how could you say that something like anything even biological is improper or is not properly functioning? Like, how do you know if your heart is a bad heart without assigning some kind of a function to it?
Well, it's not.
That
Yeah. Sorry.
No, without assigning some kind of a function to it, if it's accidental, well, then you can't really say if it does this thing on accident, it can't be wrong or bad or improperly functioning if it's accidentally not doing what you want it to do either.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how that works, because with a heart, like, presumably when we talk about correct function, we're talking about things like, I mean, I'm not a biologist, but also I wouldn't call myself an atheist either. I'm an agnostic probably. But I understand you're talking about a hypothetical point of view. Yeah, with the heart, I think that we kind of have tasks in mind, like, pumping blood across the body, or I don't know, isn't that the main thing a heart does? I'm not a biology guy. I think it's for pumping
No, that's
blood.
yeah, I agree with that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Are you the one who made the video that Jimbob was reviewing today?
No, that's another guy.
Oh, okay. I didn't
That's
catch most of
Bob.
the stream. I kind of came into I saw like a little bit of like the first half hour, and then I came into this.
I do think it's funny they both have Bob in their name, though, because you get kind of like Jimbob versus, conventional Bob.
Con Bob versus Jimbob.
Yeah, exactly. But no, that's not
Oh
me.
yeah.
I have seen that guy in my Discord, but no.
Yeah, so from what I saw of that dude's video, basically he was critiquing Jimbob's argument of Professor Dave, who was saying, Professor Dave was saying, I'm right because I'm right, as if that was a justification when Jimbob asked him, well, how can a brain that wasn't made with an intent behind it, how can, and it wasn't made for truth tracking, it was all accidental, why would I trust any truth-apt claims from a brain that was made accidentally?
So I
Or from a
haven't.
brain that accidentally existed, and it's not intended for truth tracking or thinking. It's not even intended for thinking.
So
And he goes, "I'm right because I'm right," as if that was a justification.
Yeah, so to be clear, I haven't watched Bob's video, so I don't know if I'd agree with everything Bob says. I only have a very loose sense of what that guy's like. He seems like he knows some philosophy. He seemed like reasonable-ish, but he also seems kind of insane.
The problem with most of these people is like a lot of the people who attack Jimbob, right? Is Jimbob mainly focuses on the philosophy and the epistemology of
Yes.
mostly naturalist or material worldviews, those, and like basically anything that's antithetical to orthodoxy. He most of the time just attacks their ethics or their epistemology. And the problem is that none of these atheists they never even really seem to understand the point that he's trying to convey, which was if you're a strict materialist, you destroy the possibility for knowledge.
Let me respond to your original thing. So just, you asked me about two, and I only talked about one of the people. So Bob, I don't really know. He seems like he knows some philosophy. He also seems a bit insane. He went on some really crazy rants about me and some other people in my server. Then he kind of retracted it all. I think he might have kind of a bit of mental stuff going on, but he seems like he means well when he's like on his meds, at least. And that's not a meme, like literally on his meds. The Dave stuff, I did watch that one, and I think that you and I probably have very similar assessments of that. So he kind of strikes me like a bit of a STEM lord. So I think that he's a bit dismissive of philosophy. And I think that if you do the really strict kind of philosophical analysis of the conversation, there'll be points where like he's not really addressing the thing that's asked to him, or he's saying something that's just kind of like tautological or so. So I don't think we're gonna really disagree about stuff like that. I would say one thing back though, which is that, again, I don't have anything personal about Jimbob. Like, we got in a bit of a fight there, but I do like Jimbob overall. He might not like me now, or he might just be frustrated. I don't know. But I think that,
I mean, to be fair, and I'm gonna this is just like totally just from an outsider's perspective. It did kind of seem a little sophistic, a little bit of sophistry, maybe.
That's your point of view. I mean, I don't think that's the case. And
I think at the very least, would you agree that Jimbob might think that?
I can't 100% tell if he believes that or not. I wouldn't be surprised though. It wouldn't be like shocking to me if he thinks that.
Yeah, and so a lot of people tend to get really squirrely and not answer direct questions when he asks them. So like I'll tell you, like, do you know who Corinth is?
Wait, just let me, before you talk about Corinth and Jimbob and stuff, I just want to say one thing, which is, so I agree that like a lot of these guys are kind of STEM lordish, and they're really not ready for someone like Jimbob to come in with philosophy stuff. They just don't know any philosophy. But I do think that Jimbob, I think it's been kind of demonstrated pretty obviously in this conversation, can't really hang with someone who does know philosophy. So I think,
well, I mean, I've seen him go after atheists, or plenty of people who very well understand philosophy, and he does just fine.
But just let me finish what I was saying. I would say a similar thing for Jay Dyer, who got like completely annihilated by Detroyer in a conversation, and we go over that too. But yeah, sorry, go on with what you're saying about.
Did you actually find me that? I'd love to listen to it.
Sure.
The Jay Dyer one.
I won't remember to do it later, so let me just quickly do it right now.
And I can't help you just
and then
I hear a voice. Is that
basically
one sec? Am I playing? I might have started playing a stream. Sorry, I started playing a stream. You said you wanted the one where this is the worst Jay has ever been annihilated. Troy is a philosophy student. Basically, Jay drops tag. Troy asks him to substantiate the premise that. So what I'll go through the little thing and then I'll send you the video. So basically, Jay drops tag. There's the premise that says something like, if logic exists, God exists. You can replace logic with like.
That's not the argument.
Again, just give me a second here, because you can frame tag in different ways. You can be like, if logic exists.
No, you actually can't. You actually can't. So like, I am a tag proponent. I do run this argument constantly, but people misframe.
There's too much going on. Just let me do one thing at a time. Let me get the video first, and then we can talk. Okay, one sec. Jay versus Troy. Tag. Ask yourself. Sorry, I can't multi-thread very well. Just give me a second to find it. Jay Dyer versus Detroyer. Okay, yes, here it is.
This is just even.
And let me just get it. And where do you want me to put it? Live stream, DC?
You want to you just want to drop it in the side chat?
Yes, sure. There you go. And just let me say one thing before you talk about how it's not tag. To be clear, I'm being like pretty open about how tag can be formulated. I've seen different people do it in different ways, but on some rough level, which maybe you disagree with, that's fine. It's usually something kind of like, logic, or you can replace logic with a ton of other things. The validity of sense perception, the reliability of science, the existence of other minds, whatever, all these very foundational philosophical things. Those in some sense depend on God, and we're committed to those things existing, so we're committed to God existing. It's usually something roughly like that. If you disagree, that's fine. You can explain after. And Troy basically asks, like, okay, well, show me why it is that you can't have those things without God. Jay says, well, I'll appeal to the impossibility of the contrary. So Troy says, okay, well, demonstrate that it's impossible, which is to say, show the logical contradiction entailed by logic existing or being valid or whatever, and God not existing. Jay then says that, well, you do it by worldview elimination. We can go through all these other worldviews, and every single one of those produces contradiction. So Christianity, God existing, that's the last one left standing. So Troy says, okay, well, so do it. And then Jay says, no, I can't. I'm not going to go through every single worldview one by one. Those worldviews all fit within a category schema, and each of those categories has a sort of standard failure mode, which is a fine reply. But then Troy replies by saying, okay, so then lay out the category schema and show how each one of those categories has a failure mode, leaving only Christianity standing. And then Jay loops back. He just goes back and says, well, I'm not going to go one by one, which at that point is just a straw man of Troy. And then it loops in a cycle like that. So that was a conversation where Jay was basically pushed to his limit and collapsed. And he actually fled the conversation.
I don't think that can I give you at least my perspective?
Yeah, of course.
Like, you gotta remember, Jay does these debates with fucking hundreds of people daily.
Yeah.
Literally, like every day he live streams and has an open call in, or anybody can call in. You can go, people can go back and literally you can look up every single world. You can literally look up pretty much any worldview versus Jay Dyer, and somebody, either him or one of the other channels that like makes clips for him, has posted that worldview versus his argument. And so when people constantly just keep asking him to redo the same exact thing multiple times, and he's like, dude, I've already done this specific debate. I've done this 40 times. Like, I don't want to keep doing that. And I can understand from, that perspective, where it's just like so many times you have to listen to these same stupid arguments where you realize they're either self-contradictory, they destroy the possibility for knowledge. Like materialism's a great one. People who are strict materialists, who don't believe there's any immaterial things that exist whatsoever, right out the gate, you can just refute them because they destroy the possibility for knowledge, which would destroy the possibility of any truth for that claim to even be true.
Yeah, so basically, I think that Jay ran into a problem there. I think that he pointed out he wasn't going to go one by one. He pointed out there's a category schema. Each of the categories fails in some...
Well, he's right. And what he means by that, and I can explain. So what he means by that is like, there's not an infinite number of worldviews.
Well, just let me say one thing, which is just that's the thing that he's still, as far as I'm concerned, needs to establish, because Troy asked him to establish it, and then he looped back to saying, I'm not going to go one by one, after Troy had clarified that he's not asking him to go one by one. And then they just went in a loop around those 2 points until Jay ran away.
I'm gonna be a little defensive.
I'm not asking you to agree with that. To be clear, you have not seen the conversation. You might have a different evaluation. I'm just saying what I evaluated there and what I think Jay still needs to establish. I'm not asking you to affirm that.
So at the very least, at least the way that you summarize the transcendental argument, I actually don't think you understand the argument.
That's fine. I'm down with some other formulation or something.
So like the transcendental argument, you can't just plug anything into it. You have to specifically plug in a transcendental category, and it has to be that thing specifically, because that's what we're trying to get other people to give an accounting for. So like when we run tag on the atheist, we're asking them to give an accounting for how does logic or truth itself, these immaterial, invariant, universal concepts, exist in a material world. If it's strict materialism, they can't give an accounting for that. They have to say logic exists like a rock, which it obviously doesn't.
So I don't.
So then we ask them, these are invariant. If these are invariant immaterial concepts, how can you actually think of a concept that's not tied to a mind? That doesn't even make any sense for a concept to not be tied to a mind. So if there are immaterial, invariant, universal concepts like logic, truth, mathematics, knowledge, all of these things, then that would necessitate an immaterial, invariant, universal mind.
Okay, so I just wanted to say about my understanding of tag. So I've not read in depth on tag. I've not listened to too much conversation about it. So I'm open to having some misunderstanding about it. That said, I don't think that anything you said really conflicted with what I said. When I said you can plug everything in...
Well, you put it backwards. You said that because logic exists, therefore God. That's not our argument. Our argument is that without the immaterial invariant mind, then you couldn't... Then the possibility of an immaterial invariant concept existing and then us having access to it doesn't make sense. And it's literally it would be impossible for that to be the case. I think... For the way that the universe currently functions... The only way that makes sense is for an immaterial, invariant, universal mind.
I'm just trying to say that I don't think anything you're saying right now conflicts with my understanding of tag. So like when you said you can't put anything in there, it has to be foundational, or I forget the word you used, but I tried
transcendental.
I tried, like hence transcendental argument. I tried to point out that there are always very foundational philosophical things. Maybe there's some disagreement among like pre-suppers about what those are or how exactly to structure the argument, but I don't think
we usually just go with like Aristotle's transcendental categories.
I'm just saying though, I don't think anything about the kind of the way that you seem to be formulating it is at odds with how I think about it though. So
do you care if I explain how?
We can, but do you think that it would be most effective to do? Like I know I made it into I made the conversation into I don't think that you're actually characterizing it that differently than me. And I guess I invited a fight about that. But if you want,
I'm not even trying to like start a fight with you. I just want to.
I didn't mean fight in a bad way. I just meant as like the
No, I know.
topic to go back and forth on. But I was just gonna say, for the sake of productivity, we might maybe we just leave that point and just talk about tag itself instead of talking about if I correctly characterized it. Because I'm happy to.
Well,
just...
it's not about. So the reason that I want to address the way you characterize it is because at least that's the way that you understand it, and a lot of people misunderstand the argument, and they usually get it backwards, right? So they assume that the argument structure is set up in like a modus ponens or a modus tollens, like modal scope.
Yeah,
and it's not.
Like,
the transcendental argument is its own modal scope.
Okay, so just a few things. So I'm gonna okay, so let's just be clear about what we want to talk about. Do we want to talk about whether I understand tag correctly, or do we want to just talk about tag itself, or what
Yes, both.
Okay, but let's pick one instead of multi-threading though.
Okay, so I want to at least address, do you understand the argument? Because most people don't. And so when they argue against it and they don't actually understand it, they're strawmanning the argument.
I'm not entirely...
I'm not saying it's intentional either.
No, and it's also, when you talk about understanding the argument, like different people might have different kind of ways of running it. So when I talk about it, I'm sort of just aggregating and generalizing. So, that's
totally fair.
Yeah, and when you said it's typically formulated kind of like modus tollens, modus ponens, that is how I would think about it. So if you think
no, that's not what I said. No, I said that's how most people who get the argument wrong or don't understand it, that's what they think the argument is.
Okay, maybe I misspoke there, but what I was trying to say is, when you said that there's people who understand it that way, I'm trying to go, yeah, I think that that's how I have been understanding it. So I'm trying to grant you yeah. So there's other things that confuse me in there. Like, it sounded like you called modus ponens like a modal scope, which kind of confused me because it's just an argument form. I don't really know.
Or not a modal scope. I'm sorry. What's the word? Is it modality? There's a term for like if you write it out in symbolic logic.
Rule of inference. Inference rule.
Yeah, inference rule, logical form. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So because modal scope's another thing.
Yeah, I know. I just buffered in the word there.
That's fine. I don't like hold people to like a little word they say, and no human gets all words correct at all times. Just by default, you like say things in weird orders.
Yeah, I tend to be very charitable whenever I actually when I argue with anybody.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm under that impression so far. Yeah, although sometimes people do a crazy course reversal. I'm being charitable in the middle of nowhere, but let's hope that doesn't happen. I'm just kidding.
So you understand the how
well, no, I was going to ask you. If you want to go in another direction, that's fine. But I was just going to say, if you don't think of it the way that I'm talking about it, maybe you just give your rendition, and we can just talk about your rendition of it.
Okay, so obviously the way
I see this Jake guy keeps trying to pipe up. Also, what are we doing here?
Ooh.
I don't mind talking to more than one person. It's not the end of the world. I just don't want a multi-thread where people are bringing up like.
Well, no, these guys tend to be very respectful of not just all of us dogging on one person.
Yeah, what do we want to do here? I see him keep trying to pop up. Are we wanting to talk to more people, or are we just?
Yeah, I'll wrap this up in just a few minutes.
Okay,
Jake,
so let's do just me and you for
yeah.
Now. Okay, so yeah,
we'll keep it. I'll keep it to a few minutes.
Yeah, why don't you give your kind of rendition?
Well, I'm gonna explain. Yeah, I'm gonna try to explain exactly what I mean, and that way I don't misspeak or miscommunicate what it is I'm trying to get across.
Yes, and let me just preempt with two things. One is, if you do misspeak or you realize something about the formulation isn't perfect, that's fine, and we can just reverse that. And I'm not going to go, haha, you backtracked or
haha, you big dummy, you don't even know how to fucking talk.
Not going to do that. And also, just before you go into it, I would just say, I strongly anticipate that the reaction I'll have if you kind of go into a few sort of paragraphs of natural language is I won't be exactly clear about what the premise and conclusion are, and I'll kind of want to get clarity about that. So I'll leave it to you, but you might want to start by just kind of laying out premises and conclusion.
I'm going to, but I'm going to start with what most people think we're saying, and I'm going to explain how that's not the case first.
Sure.
So what most people think we're saying is that logic, a lot of people, at least who don't understand the argument, or they get it wrong, they think that we're saying logic exists, X, therefore Y, God. They usually think we're doing a modus ponens, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, I always count myself roughly probably in that category. That's the general kind of way I see, or how I've interpreted people running it.
Yeah, okay, so that's actually not the way the argument's structured. the transcendental argument is actually structured like this.
Well,
X
just
is the
one
necessary
thing before you
precondition
launch
for
into
Y.
it. When you talk about how it's structured, you got to understand people have different ways.
I'm saying
of
the
structuring
original
things.
argument, the original actual tag argument that was at least crafted by Greg Bonson, and I think it was later perfected by other people. But
okay, yeah.
it's
So
the same,
there might be a confusion there. When I'm talking about it, I'm not necessarily referring to Bonson's original formulation. I've not read Bonson. I watched I think a debate with him once. I'm just talking about sort of what I see out there in the world. So I guess I just kind of don't like the framing when which I really think you're doing this, but you're kind of going like the correct way that it's talked about, the argument, and I'm kind of
there is a correct way to run the argument, because if you run it the other way,
wait a second. If by correct way you're basically just saying the original way that Bonson had formulated it, then I don't think that I'm not even confident that I know. I've not read Bonson. But
no, that's not even what I'm saying.
Look, just let me get through just the sentence, and then you can go into the formulation. I'm just kind of hedging against a portrayal that I totally misunderstand what everyone's saying, because I think I've seen a lot of people run it basically in a modus ponens or modus tollens form. You know, I've taken logic courses, spent some time with logic. I don't think I'm like incapable of formulating these things. Now, you might say that they've kind of drifted from the original way that it's was run, or from the ideal formulation. I'm fine with that. I just kind of don't like, maybe you weren't even trying to imply this, but the slight implication that I'm just totally missing what everyone's saying. I think I have a good idea, but I'm also not talking about Bonson's original formulation. I'm happy to hear about that.
The reason that I'm saying there's a correct way to run tag is because if you try to run it in a modus ponens or modus tollens, and I've heard plenty of people do that,
right,
it doesn't actually follow. It doesn't follow.
Okay.
It doesn't work. So the reason why there's a correct way to run it is because the transcendental argument inference rule is actually its own inference rule.
Okay.
So
yeah,
what it's
so
saying is that
explain,
X, so what it's saying is that what the actual argument is saying is X is the necessary precondition for Y to even exist.
Okay, I'm just writing it down.
If Y exists, we can infer that X has to exist. So that's why it's not a modus ponens.
If Y exists, then X must exist.
Y, therefore X. Yeah. X is the necessary precondition for Y. Y, therefore X.
Sorry, just to be clear, I'm not sure I caught that. If Y exists, then X.
Then X has to be the case, because X is the necessary precondition for Y.
So that's like the first premise, basically. If Y exists,
that's the only premise. That's literally it.
Wait, just
that's the inference rule. That's the way you write out.
X is the necessary precondition for Y. Y, therefore X. That's what you need to write down.
1 second. Let's just. You might not have been here. I wasn't looking at who all is in here, but I think we just were gonna do.
Yeah, it's just gonna be me. It's just gonna be me to ask yourself for a minute, guys.
So I'm just writing it down.
Yeah,
I have this one premise written. If Y exists, then X must exist. And you're saying there's not another premise. It just goes to the conclusion from that single premise.
So you have to first establish. You have to establish the X is the necessary precondition part. You have to establish that.
What is this?
Then you have to, so for that I guess is the first premise, and then what you do is you establish Y does exist. If Y exists, the conclusion X has to exist is what follows from it.
Okay, so just to get
it, I can give you an example real quick, just a real quick example, and I think it'll make a lot of sense once I say it. A cow existing is the necessary precondition for me holding a steak. I'm holding a steak, therefore there had to have at least been a cow that existed.
Okay, so just trying to get it into premise conclusion form. You can kind of correct me until I've got it right here. So I just posted in VC text. I can post elsewhere if that's preferable. Is VC text fine? Or you want me to post somewhere else?
It's fine, that's fine.
Okay, so I heard for one of the premises, if Y exists, then X must exist. Is that correct or no?
No.
Okay, so...
Here, hold on. I can pull it up. I can type it out real quick.
Sure.
So X, I don't actually think I have a... So I'm going to use a different... So there's a, obviously I can't fully write out the symbolic logic on my keyboard because it doesn't have all the symbols, but we're just going to use the slash...
You got to get expanso.
I know. We're just going to use... The slash mark is my symbol for necessary precondition. There's a symbol for it.
Okay, and I'm going to post a really good piece of open source software that can give you symbols with macros on your keyboards for anyone who wants to type logic at people all the time.
I'm going to copy your therefore symbol real quick. It'll help me.
Yeah, it's a nice symbol.
So that's the way the argument's actually wrote out.
What is
the slash? I'm just using as different as the symbol for the necessary precondition symbol. Because there's an actual symbol for it in symbolic logic. I don't even know how to do it on a computer, but that's what the actual there's an actual symbol for necessary precondition in symbolic logic.
Are you talking about kind of like modal logic?
I'm honestly not sure. It's been so long since I've thought that, since I've talked this deeply on the symbol and the logic of it, like the symbolic logic.
Talking about that?
I don't think so.
Those are necessarily impossible in modal logic.
All right, give me 1 minute. My wife needs my attention for something. Okay. If anybody else wants to talk for a minute, that's fine. If Eli wants to, Eli's really good at this, so.
Yeah, and I'll actually just say there is now someone in here who's better than me with this topic, which is Troy, because he spends, I think, significantly more time than me with Phil of Religion. Right, I don't even read Phil of Religion, so I just watched some debates here or there. But yeah, sorry, Jake, what's up?
Well, I was just going to say, oftentimes, a lot of people with this argument, they are kind of thinking that we're saying that you can't have knowledge. The argument is not that these other positions, these other worldviews can't have knowledge. It's that they can't give an account or a justification for that knowledge. So that's where a lot of people make, I think, a lot of confusion on that, because they're saying, well, we can obviously know things, so your argument doesn't make sense. Totally get that. And then we're also asking for a justification, under a specific definition, which means in the epistemic understanding of what a justification. So not just any reason, but good reasons. And to give an account of that would actually do the work of justifying the proposition or propositional knowledge at all. So I think a lot of people make misunderstandings when it comes to that per se.
Okay, let me just talk about the first part. So I do understand what you're saying there. There's a distinction between, something like logic exists, or a given worldview can give an account for logic, whatever exactly that means. And when I was saying at the start that people run tag in different ways, different things can be substituted in, this is kind of subsumed in what I'm talking about there. Sometimes it'll be the thing that they're putting in there is just logic. Sometimes it's like sense perception. Sometimes it's some kind of ability to account for some fundamental thing. But my general understanding is usually if we can account for this thing, then the Christian God exists. We can, or whatever. If this thing exists, we can account for it. However exactly it's formulated, then the Christian God exists. We can account for it. It does exist. Whatever. Therefore, the Christian God exists. That's how I've understood it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the form of transcendental arguments, I think, needs to be distinguished, because you can make a transcendental argument from anything, from using a pencil, whatever, right? We're not necessarily saying that's the particular form of this argument. We're basically saying that to account for the experiences that we have, the totality of the experience, so not just logic, not just morality, not just any of these things on their own separated, the totality of our experience already presupposes certain conditions in itself. And that condition is satisfied by particularly the Orthodox God. So we're trying to distinguish it from just general transcendental arguments themselves, which just point to kind of universality generally, right? So what Kant was trying to do against Hume. So we're trying to separate from that and give a more holistic approach epistemically than just any old transcendental argument in form. Does that make sense?
I am not 100% sure. It just sounds like you were saying there's a kind of generic form and that you have a specific version that you're using for your purposes. That was kind of what I got from that.
Yeah. Because again, we're kind of taking into, and this is going to, we can get into the weeds if you'd like to get in the weeds. We don't have to, but basically what we're kind of pointing out is it's not just the universals themselves that are floating out there abstractly, like just logic that's divorced from morality or divorced from ethics or divorced from having the concept of self. When you start to approach epistemology correctly, in my opinion, right, it turns into kind of a holism where you're like, okay, all of these things are kind of entailed and entail each other. So what would actually have to be the precondition for not just one universal state of affairs, which you can make a transcendental argument from anything for, but all of them contextually? And that's where you start to get into the question and really down to the core of what TAG is attempting to do. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I think so. I'm kind of trying to write up a little bit about it and trying to capture the sort of holism you were getting at there.
Yeah. So for example, like in Plato, sorry, not to cut you off, but like in Plato, the epistemic holism kind of comes out of the problems that Plato had between the one and the many and the forms, is how exactly through metexis, which is his attempt to try to satisfy that condition of how participation in the forms happens, it kind of starts to turn into, well, these things kind of all presuppose each other. Like the good kind of presupposes the beautiful kind of presupposes the good, morality, self, all these things. So the universals kind of, if they are entailed, require some therefore universal or unifying principle by which they can all be coherently intertwined. So that comes later in the development of epistemology in some sense, and is kind of wrapped up with the a priori stuff. But that's kind of where I'm getting at with epistemic holism, quote unquote.
So if you look in VC text, oh, fucking Discord, it's like Markdown format or something, so it didn't render my my little dash. Let me just do a little dasherino there. Okay. So I mean, I usually understand tag to be some kind of thing that roughly conforms to this kind of structure. I know the other guy was saying it's not a modus ponens, so okay, I'll hear out whatever he says there. But it just sounds like you're saying that you don't want to slip up if you're the guy who runs tag by putting something overly narrow in the blank spot there, like just logic or just accounting for logic. You want to say that there's this like holistic, integrated philosophical perspective that goes into the slot there.
Because the way I'm trying to gear it towards is, look, the whole point of really getting people into the Christian paradigm isn't just to believe in some abstract notion or concept or logicality. It's to get us to believe in the incarnation of Christ. So the fact that Christ takes on the totality of our human nature is exactly why I'm pointing to this epistemic holism. That is the ultimate presupposition. And so I'm trying to position it into something that doesn't just turn into a logical argument that leaves it in the abstract, but actually shows that our experience of human nature needed to be completed and reoriented into God as a justifying factor. So if I were to ask, what is the epistemic justification for tag and orthodoxy? It is the incarnation of Jesus Christ. That's the major point, is that's why it's a holistic approach, because it entails the entirety of our human nature.
Okay. So I don't know if you, so I think I understand what you're saying, at least at some general level. Like, I mean, I think I would just kind of be repeating myself. It just sounds like you want to fit some really holistic, integrated thing into the sort of slot there in the argument. So I guess it's just what are we aiming to do in this conversation? Like if we're gonna if the idea is like if you just kind of wanted to like communicate sort of a charitable way you understand tag or something like that, then obviously that's been done. If you were kind of wanting to fight about it, then I think it would be about getting into like what exactly that thing is, that holistic integrated thing that requires God, and we'd have to kind of, like you said, get into the weeds about it. So what was your intention? To get into the weeds or just to communicate the point about holism?
Well, I was trying to communicate the point about holism, but I was also trying to just communicate the necessity of that in itself. So it's like we can get into the weeds too. I'm happy to do that, because I think fundamentally, like if we want to be serious with epistemology, like you either have to abandon being able to justify these universal conditions, this universality of nature, or you have to give an account or a justification for that, right? And so what I'm just kind of positing is, like, let's say we're taking an evolutionary or atheistic position. I see that logically entailing having to give up the account. So basically just admitting, okay, well, we can't at all have knowledge then in the strict justified sense. We can all just kind of have beliefs that maybe have some good reasons behind them, but nothing actually is justified on a paradigm level.
Okay, I guess we need to determine what we're doing. So, like, firstly, I don't want to hang around too long. I don't mind like staying for a bit to talk to people and deal with some challenges and stuff. But also I am just kind of thinking about the thing I got in it with Jimbob with, and I'm kind of wondering if the best use of time is actually to see if anyone's got any challenge to that. Because I hear the point you're making about tag, but this is going to turn into like a big, huge fucking tag discussion. So then
we can put that off, man. No worries. I'm not here to force you.
Eli wants to tangle up with you.
Okay. Well, one thing is just.
You cool with that, Jake?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah. One thing is just just 1 second is I do kind of, I think I mean, I'm happy to talk about tag if we want to talk about tag for a bit. That's fine. And to be fair, I did bring up Jay getting smoked by Troy, who's actually in the room now, about on tag, so that is on me. But the thing that is most interesting to me, although again, I'm happy to talk about tag if that's what everyone wants to do, would be kind of to see if anyone disagrees with the problem that I raised for Jimbob, or if anyone sort of, if people sort of understand the point that I was making.
Yeah, I do, and I think
hold
that
on
I
a
can
second,
make
guys,
a
hold on a
better.
second. I'm just gonna let you guys know I'm gonna stay unmuted. I'll play a little bit of some moderation here because I think that was one thing that was lacking with you and JB. So
JB?
I'm just not gonna let you guys cut each other off
Jimbob.
constantly or something like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So, okay. Well,
wait, before you go, bro. Are you guys recording this? I need to know just so everyone can know in the room.
No, I'm not recording anything.
I have it recording on my end. Yes.
Okay, so you are recording.
Yeah, I've been recording from the very start when I talked to Jimbob.
Okay, so just so everyone knows. If you aren't comfortable with it, say it now. If you are, then go ahead, bro.
Okay, Eli.
Oh yeah, I don't care.
Were you saying, so you want to talk about the kind of thing with the proper function and stuff like that that I was kind of grilling Jimbob on earlier?
Yeah. Well, you were asking him for a definition of stance-independent proper function, and I would just say...
Just 1 sec. I do want to give a little hedge here, which is really what I'm asking is to communicate the meaning of the term. A definition is a good way to do that, but I don't want to get boxed into like, oh, you think everything's definable? Like, if there's some other way to communicate it, I'm fine with that. It could be that it needs to be communicated.
Sure, yeah, it's just objective truthfulness or objective correctiveness.
Wait, sorry.
Correctness,
Let's just slow down and just one step at a time. Just to be clear, you understand, what I want is to understand the meaning of the term, not necessarily for the meaning to be conveyed via definition.
Sure, but you also understand that just saying you don't understand something is an argument from incredulity, right?
No, I don't think it's an argument.
No, he wasn't making an argument saying that I don't understand it.
Well, yeah, no, true. Okay. Well, again, I mean, if you have trouble understanding it, again, that's not necessarily my problem.
Yeah, that's right. I'm totally fine with that. Yeah, it could be that everyone else gets it and I'm just fucking retarded. That's
right.
Look, can't we be retarded and you be retarded?
Yeah, I mean that could be that. There's
I think just he's retarded.
But I'm happy to grant Eli what he's saying though, which is just like, yeah, it could just be that what's actually going on is I'm just extremely confused, and it makes a lot of sense. I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of sort of reasons you can build up a pretty reliable kind of inductive argument that I can grasp things. But yeah, of course it's possible that I'm just not understanding and everything works out just fine, and the problem is me. I totally agree with you, Eli.
Sure. And basically what he was trying to point out is, since you essentially agreed that there is no stance independent proper function, I didn't quite
do that. I didn't quite do that. There's a difference between saying,
oh, so there is a stance independent proper function.
Well, there's another option, right? It might not be that I'm saying this exists or doesn't exist. It might be that I'm saying I don't understand what this refers to.
Okay, it's referring to the objectivity of the proper function. If you're saying that proper function is merely a subjective term that anybody can apply and therefore it's a stance dependent proper function, then that's fine. That can be your position. But what we're criticizing is if it's subjective and your brain functions to give you truth statements, then your truth statements are stance dependent truth statements, which I can invalidate with my stance dependent truth statements. And we can't actually come to the objective truth of anything. You've made objective truth impossible. You've made truth subjectives, which destroys the possibility of debate at all.
So I do want to make a kind of meta-philosophical point. There's different kind of meta-philosophical approaches. Like some of you guys probably heard of this stuff, like conceptual engineering or ordinary language philosophy. So I just worry a little bit that when we talk about this is what the thing actually means, that we might be falling into a bit of a weird meta-philosophical frame. So
is truth objective or subjective, Has?
Okay, but it feels like you're not letting me complete my sentence. You got to let me finish what I'm saying. So
sure.
Just the point I'm making about a meta-philosophy is just when I say there's a stance-independent notion of proper function, I'm not saying something like this is the one true way to understand this concept. What I'm saying is this is a way that you could understand the concept. Now, you might think that there's certain problems that arise if you understand it in a given way. But yeah, I want to be clear that we're not doing some weird meta-philosophical kind of thing here. What I'm doing when I say I understand a stance-independent notion of proper function is really just that. I'm just saying, here is a way that someone could talk about it, and I would understand what they mean if they were doing that.
Okay. So is truth subjective or objective?
Well, I'm a bit confused because I don't... So I might annoy you here, but I'm kind of going to say the same sort of thing that I said to Jimbob. If you just want to have a conversation about truth or something, we could do that. But my criticism for Jimbob is about conveying what the term in his conclusion means. Because his conclusion is there is no proper function. So if I want to kind of plant my feet in the ground here, I can be like, look, I'm not going to answer a bunch of questions. The argument, his conclusion, has this particular term in it. I don't understand what that means, and what I need is for someone to communicate that with me, or else there's no way for us to really engage. I just don't know what the conclusion even means.
So I think that if I can, and I'm not speaking for Jimbob, but I tend to agree with the conclusions that he draws. So I'm going to try to pick up where he left off, but maybe use some different language here. I think that it would be like objective function or a teleological function, something that actually has objectively a type of purpose. But if that doesn't exist and it's all merely stance dependent, subjective, then you couple that with the atheist materialist presupposition that truth is a product of the brain. If that's stance dependent, then it can be completely invalidated by my stance dependent notion of truth, and we can't come to an objective idea of the notion of the function of the brain, specifically when the atheist materialist says that truth is a product of the function of the brain. So taking this, I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but if you do take the position that the brain's function is completely incidental and stance dependent, then you've now made truth subjective, and the purpose of the debate is completely arbitrary and impossible.
So what I was trying to understand is basically what proper function means, because it's in Jimbob's conclusion. And it sounded like when you started, communicating what it meant there, I heard you use the term, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it sounded like you started talking about objective function. And right? Yeah, okay, right. So that's the very concept being re-invoked that I don't understand, right? Because objective, what does that mean if not something kind of like stance dependent? And I'm laughing at my own incredulity here, not laughing at you.
No. So that's the thing. That's not what subjective would be. Maybe another way to describe stance dependent, mind dependent, depending on your own beliefs about the situation. Whereas something being objective would be outside of someone's mind and stance. So again, I'm going to push on you and say I don't see how you can say you don't understand the difference between objective and subjective. We're talking about an objective teleological function. Okay, fair, but that's fine. Okay. So we're talking, but you want this meaning. Well, real quick, you've been asking Jimbob. You grilled him over and over again about the meaning when we say stance independent proper function. Yes. I think a simple way to put a meaning there is to say objective function.
Okay, and does objective basically mean just something that would be exactly as it is, regardless of what anyone thinks about it?
It would be the objective truth of the matter.
So that's another concept that I don't understand. Not a objective proper function, which is kind of what you invoke to explain stance independent proper function. It sounds like the same concept that I'm struggling to understand, right?
Okay, do you think that that's not possible?
I don't understand what it means. I also want to draw your attention to a little philosophical thing that you kind of done a few times that might be problematic. You keep kind of asking me questions like, do I think that's true? Do I think that's not possible? But asking questions like that is kind of predicated on the assumption that I understand what you're talking about. I'm actually stuck at a more fundamental level than that, which is I don't actually understand the concept you're referring to. It's not, I don't know it's possible. It's not, I don't think it's true.
So you don't know the difference between...
Just let me finish. It's not that I don't think it exists. It's not that I don't understand the difference between objective and subjective. It's that specifically, stance independent proper function is a concept that I don't currently have.
I think the reason you're drawing that conclusion is you're assuming that proper has to be the definition of proper in that sentence would have to also be stance dependent, depending on the definition of the individual stance of what proper means. Is that appropriate way to understand why you're having trouble understanding it?
I don't think so. I'll try to say why. You tell me if I'm understanding. It sounded like the problem is that it sounded like you invoked the same concept that I'm struggling to understand to explain the concept that I'm having trouble understanding. So
I'm having trouble understanding how you're not understanding it.
Well, I mean,
so help me understand what you're not understanding. If are you saying that what you don't understand is how proper can be defined in a stance independent way?
Yes, that's right. I don't understand what stance independent proper function is. That's right.
Okay, but and specifically, like, okay, let's say we took proper out of there. Would you understand what stance independent function means?
Yeah, I would. Well, yeah, like to just say, for instance, like, you know, the star orbiting the center of the galaxy or something. It's a function the star has, and it's not contingent on minds existing that it does that or something. That makes sense to me.
Okay, so this is interesting. This is interesting. So when you remove,
just let me finish. It's the combination of objectivity with something that I can't really get my head around in an objective way that confuses me. It's not the notion of objectivity. It's calling a particular thing objective. This is also why
I try and clear this up a little bit. I think
this is just let me finish. Just let me finish. This is also why I objected when you kind of said you don't understand the distinction between objective and subjective. Of course I do. One of them is contingent on the existence of minds, and the other isn't. I get that. Again, it's the combination of objective or stance.
No, let me get in here.
I feel like I'm being cut off a lot. Just let me get my thing across.
I'm trying to play some moderation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Oh, that's sorry. I don't know your voices. That's Steelborn again, isn't it? Okay,
yeah,
sorry. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's not the concept of objectivity that confuses me. It's the concept of pairing that word or other words that seem to mean like basically the same thing, like stance independent, with proper function that confuses me. That I don't get, because to me, when I think proper function, I just think we're talking about something functioning in line with some task or goal or something like that.
So
can I get in here now?
Try and clarify
yeah, of
for
course,
Eli a little bit too as well, but real quick, I want to just
let's
let
Eli determine that, because if he doesn't want you to argue for him, let's just let him.
I'm not trying to argue for him. I'm just trying to ask you a question to clarify for me and everybody else listening.
Let's see what he wants. So it's not what do you want, Eli? Do you just
to
want talk?
Yeah, just I want to hear what Steelborn has to ask first, and then I've got my thought.
Okay.
So can I ask yourself, is the problem that you're having with the idea of stance independent proper function is the idea of proper that really doesn't make any sense without a mind trying to like order the task to happen?
Not quite.
Okay.
It's not about a mind, but it's about talking about proper outside of the context of some kind of goal or task.
Well,
okay,
exactly.
Yeah, in order to have
that's
a
what
goal,
I was
you
saying.
need to have a mind. So that's what I think the confusion is happening.
Well, here, let me
segue
into segue into what I was getting to. So I asked him, if we took proper out, he totally understands stance independent function. It's proper that the confusion was happening because a stance has to define what proper means, right? Are we clear on that so far?
Sorry, I might have slightly zoned out. Can you repeat?
So you have an understanding with what stance independent function is. The confusion comes from stance independent proper function, but you have clarity when we remove the word proper, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So here's the problem, is that you actually, proper is built and baked into function itself, because if you have an understanding of its stance independent, i.e. objective function, that also presupposes that you would have an understanding of stance independent dysfunction. So there's a way that it satisfies the term function, and then there's a way that it satisfies the term dysfunction based on what it's doing. How do you have that stance independently?
I'm not totally sure if I understand. You might need to elaborate this, but what I can say is when I think about stance independent function, I'm basically just interpreting that like meaning that a thing is doing something. Like, you know, a star is orbiting the center of the galaxy, or the leaf is falling.
Hold on. Just doing something and having a function isn't necessarily identical.
Okay, so just right there, if by function, when you use it without proper, you're not meaning just doing something, then I might actually not understand what it means.
Well, that's why I said proper is baked into the word function, because if you agree and you said that you have clarity over stance independent function, function also presupposes that there's dysfunction.
No,
So that means that you have a standard that is this thing is functioning and this thing is dysfunctioning.
I think
How do you have that stance independently?
So I think there might be a little bit of confusion about what I'm saying there. So when I say I can understand stance independent function, I am not talking about a notion that has any kind of properness baked into it. I'm just meaning, like, a synonym would just be thing that a thing does. So I can understand, its stance independent function, like the star is orbiting the galaxy, or stance independent dysfunction, like the star is not orbiting the galaxy. But if you're using function when you say stance independent function in a way that bakes in the concept of proper function, then that actually is something that I don't understand.
So the problem is you're trying to have function and functionality without its opposite counterpart of dysfunctionality. You're saying that something can be a stance independent function by
I don't
simply
think so.
existing
I
and its
don't
dysfunction, or simply
so.
doing what it does.
One second.
But for it to have dysfunction would be it not doing what it does. But now you've created your own type of stance dependent standard for, well, this is its function and this is its dysfunction. What if the star not orbiting the Earth is actually the function, and it or whatever you said about the star, what if that's actually the dysfunction and not the function? What if the brain thinking and coming to examining conclusions is actually the dysfunction and not the function?
To be clear, what I'm saying is when I say stance independent function, I'm just talking about a thing that a thing is doing. You could come up with a corresponding notion of dysfunction.
Yeah, what if that thing that the thing is
finish.
doing is actually the dysfunction? Well, I know, but you're not addressing what I'm saying. What if the thing it's doing is the dysfunction? That's my next question.
I'm gonna complete what I said. So let's just try to stay fair here. So I understand stance independent function as basically just meaning a thing that something is doing. Now, you could create a corresponding notion of stance independent dysfunction, which is just a thing that a thing is not doing. But if when you use the term stance independent function and dysfunction, you're baking in some kind of normativity, as in your notion there involves a correct or incorrect thing, correct or some kind of correctness or incorrectness to the thing that is happening, then that's not the same notion as me, and that's not what I'm signing off on when I say I understand the concept. When I say I understand the concept, I'm talking about the non-normative notion, not the normative one that you're using. Yeah.
Well, hold on. I mean, now we're talking about normativity.
Let me just get this out, because broadly the move that you're doing is you're taking proper out of the sentence, asking if I understand it. I say yes, and then saying proper was baked in all along. But that's just to shift back to the sense that I don't understand.
It's to expose that you absolutely know what that statement means, and you were being a little weasel when you pretended that you didn't know what it means. So here's what I'm. Let me ask you this. Okay, you keep. Can I get in and ask a question now?
I'm gonna just take a piss. I'll be back in a second.
Of course.
No, I'll be right back. I'm not running. You do agree humans have to pee? That's one of our proper functions, right? I have to properly functionally take a piss. So just give me like 1 minute, and I'll be right back. And you can talk to like Troy or Bob or someone like that for just a minute. I will deal with the exact point that you're bringing up. No one's running anywhere.
Eli, can I ask a question while we wait for Ask Yourself?
Yeah, but when he gets back, we'll have to cut it down, and I want to get back to him because there's a very specific question I want to ask him that I think is going to be really important for the conversation.
Yeah, when he joins back, I'll shut up. So Tiny Toffee in the text chat, I think, asked an interesting question. I love your answer on. So they asked, but if you can give an account of it's identical except for a few facts. For example, imagine a view that's identical to orthodoxy, yet omits Jesus' resurrection. Why is such a view inconsistent or incoherent?
Because it would go against the teachings of the normative authority of the Orthodox Church. It would be heretical.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. Tony, if you want to respond to that.
Hey, Eli, this is Ephraim. I'm one of the mods here. I'm just wanting to update roles and stuff. You are a baptized Orthodox Christian, or are you an inquirer or catechumen?
Baptized Orthodox Christian.
Me too. Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Look, I'm trying. All right, we can't all be cool.
You'll get there. I guess technically I was received by a chrismation and my Lutheran baptism was accepted.
That's interesting because my Lutheran baptism was not accepted in the OCA, and
Dude,
so my
well, you
wife and I
should
had
feel,
to be baptized. Isn't that funny?
yeah, you should feel fortunate because frankly, I listened to Peter Hears and I'm like, should I go to the monastery and request a corrective baptism? Because there's a
Sure,
whole
right.
bunch of sacramental stuff I miss. It's a tricky one, but you know.
I think the answer to that particular conundrum is pretty simple. We have saints in the church that were received by chrismation only, such as my wife's patron saint, Saint Elizabeth, the New Martyr. And I wouldn't really stress out about that, because at the end of the day, here's the thing: you won't be held to account for that. The bishop and the priest will. That's not going to be held against
Precisely.
you. So I wouldn't stress out.
See, that's one thing that I really love about the fact that, me going into the Orthodox Church. I've never been baptized before, so my first and only baptism will be in the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, glory to God on that.
Don't be boasting now. All right, we got some people here who are defective. No, I'm joking.
Hey, since it's casual talk, is this a place I could jump in with a comment about the discussion that's been going on?
No, everybody but you's allowed to talk.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
take
go
that
ahead.
as a yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so I've been listening. My take on it is that just some simple clarification. It seems like it's been getting reached at, but maybe we could just like slow it down and just nail it to the ground. When we say proper, aren't we saying basically we're invoking subjectiveness? And I think I've heard that being said because proper implies proper according to who?
Right.
That's
Right. Well,
typically what the
that's
word
what I
even
think
means.
his problem was. But here's what I'm trying to nail him down on is I said, okay, fine, let's take proper out. Do you now have a clarity and understanding? And he says yes. But if you look at function, and he goes, well, I think the function of a star is it doing what it's doing. What I'm going to ask him is, how do you know that that's not actually the dysfunction? Actually, you're saying that you have clarity of a stance independent function either relies on your stance dependent notion of what the function of a star is, or there is a stance independent notion of the function of a star. And I'd like to know from his worldview what that is. This is where I'm wanting to pin him down, and he's taking a piss. So,
well, I think by even saying dysfunction, aren't you basically invoking propriety, just doing it
I have returned.
silently? Aren't you just basically saying improper function when you say dysfunction? So you're still just saying propriety.
this is the crux of the conversation.
Hold on a sec. Point of order.
Well,
ask yourself his back, guys.
Yeah, so I don't want Eli to feel like he didn't get his thing addressed. So did you want to continue with me, or were you getting into something with others?
Oh, no. I told everybody that it goes right back to you whenever you come back. So
Okay.
what I wanted to ask you was, if you have an understanding and clarity over the term stance independent function, okay, how do you, and you cited anything like when it's doing what it's doing, that's its stance independent function. How do you know that that's not actually its stance independent dysfunction?
I'm just interpreting that to be the meaning of the term stance independent function, as in like what it's doing. That's what it means to talk about stance independent function.
But is that so now? But it's actually stance dependent now because it relies on your interpretation.
The function?
Well, no, you just said I'm interpreting that to mean the function that is doing what it's doing, and stance independent function. But you actually need your stance to tell you that the function is when it's doing what it's doing, and not what it should be doing something else. That's not actually the dysfunction.
I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at, but what I'm saying is that I understand. I can understand stance independent function if that just means basically what a thing is doing, and I can understand stance independent dysfunction if that just means what a thing is not doing. But if when you talk about stance independent function, you're actually baking in some kind of normativity, like there's some kind of properness about it, well, then I don't understand the notion. So what you don't want to do is, just let me finish. What you don't want to do is some kind of semantic shift where you present a concept to me and ask me if I understand it. And I say, yeah, sure, I have a notion of that. And then you say, well, actually, then you also understand this other thing, which is not the same notion, right? You don't want to shift into talking about some kind of notion that has proper baked in if the question you asked me didn't have that baked into it.
Well, that's fine. What I'm pointing out is that from your position and from your worldview, this is all back to the engagement that Jim Bob had with Professor Dave about whether or not his brain had a function, right?
Yes.
And so you're saying that the brain has a stance independent function.
Well, to be clear, to Jim Bob wanted to expand out a bit. So he wanted to, instead of talking about the brain having a function, he felt that, though I'm happy to talk about it like that if you want, Eli, the way he wanted to think about it was he wanted to just talk about proper function generally. So he doesn't have to talk about like brains or something specifically, I guess. So his conclusion is just there is no proper function. And my reply is I don't understand what he's actually
Well,
referring to when he says proper
hold on.
function.
Let's be fair. What he's saying is the conclusion of the opponent's worldview, the reductio, like you were saying in the
Yes,
beginning,
that's right.
is that there is no proper
Yeah,
function.
let me be clear,
think
so
proper
no one thinks I'm
function.
straw manning Jim Bob. Just to be clear, I agree with you.
Yeah.
This is not a
Okay.
conclusion that he thinks is true. This is an internal critique. He thinks that if you grant a series of
Correct.
assumptions, which he does not grant himself, that you'll get this conclusion that there's no proper function.
Well, right. What he said, let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly, that we're on the same page.
Yep.
He's saying that in the worldview of the evolution proponent, they are granting themselves a notion of proper function that actually isn't the case when you reductio their worldview from an evolution proponent standpoint.
Okay, that might be saying too much for me to be sure that's what he's getting at. Like what I know is the conclusion of his argument. The conclusion, and what you just said there is perfectly plausible. That might be the way he gets to the conclusion. AKA, like that might be the kind of the premises. But all I know is the conclusion because I made sure that we both agree about what he was saying there. And the conclusion is there is no proper function. Where proper function, yeah.
The contradiction is that evolution and I'll want to be very clear. I don't know how to make the entire scope of his anti-evolution argument. I agree with it, but I'm not as good at doing it myself. But what I can point out is that what the performative contradiction that he's pointing out within the evolutionist proponent's worldview is that all of the effects of random mutation by a natural selection is it makes the quote unquote function completely incidental. It's incidentally doing a thing. So you can't point to the notion of a proper function. And then that's where you were getting hung up with proper function. What I'm pointing out is that we can actually remove the word proper, but proper is baked into the presupposition of saying that a brain has a function at all.
Okay, stop there
so
for just
you
a second.
getting hung up on the word proper,
yes,
the problem still stands if you remove the word proper.
I want to interject there. So I agreed with everything you said there. I agreed with how you formulated Jim Bob's thing, how you formulated my objection. But then you pointed out, okay, well, say we remove the word proper, and you tell me if I misrepresent you somewhere. Say we remove the word proper. You do understand what it is for something to have a stance-independent function at that point. But if you understand that, proper is baked in already, so you actually do understand proper function all along. That's your point, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so do you understand what my reply is to that? Do you think you could kind of give my reply?
If you say I have no clue what you mean by that, I might scream, but no, what is it?
No, that's not exactly. That's not exactly my reply. Also, there's something that's just been triggering me the whole time. I'll come right back to this exact part of the conversation, but does Nix refer to the operating system?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's just a surname.
I was gonna say if we're both like highly based Linux users and you're using Nix OS.
Absolutely not. I'm an HVAC technician.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, yeah, that's cool stuff to know. I actually want to learn a bunch of stuff like that at some point. Okay, so yeah, no, my reply is, when you ask me that question, you say, okay, well, remove the word proper. You understand things have stance-independent function, right? I'm going to refer to that as stance-independent function 1. Okay, that's the notion of stance-independent function. I'm adding a little 1 beside it to indicate notion 1. And I say, yes, I understand that. Then you reply by saying, well, actually, in that case, you do understand stance-independent proper function because stance-independent function has stance-independent proper function built into it. Well, then you're shifting to talking about some other notion of stance-independent function 2, which I didn't understand, and which is identical to the initial concept that I said I didn't understand. So that's my reply, that basically your argument,
right.
what you're doing is kind of semantically shifting. You're taking out the word I have problem with, getting me to grant that I understand something. And then when I grant that I understand it, you're saying, okay, actually you do understand the thing you had a problem with. But at that point, you're switching to another notion, which is actually the notion I do have a problem with and don't understand.
Hold on, it's not. So the reason why it's a good move and pins you down on what you're saying is if you say that you understand stance independent function. Okay, the second notion, the second point that you're saying that I'm doing some semantic switch, we could just call stance independent dysfunction. Okay, now I'm asking for a stance independent distinction between stance independent function and stance independent dysfunction.
I don't know what you mean by stance independent distinction, but let's just assume you mean a distinction, right? You're just asking for what the difference is.
Well, so what I'm getting at, to put all my cards on the table, is I don't think that you can give a stance independent distinction, with at least not within the worldview that I'm assuming that you have,
Sorry, when
some
you
type
say,
of atheist
sorry, just
materialist worldview.
clarifying question. When you say, I'm a bit confused by the language stance independent distinction. Do you just mean a distinction between the two notions of stance independence?
Well, yeah, again, like I said, you said that the stance independent function of a thing is it doing what it does. How do you know stance independently that that's not actually the stance independent dysfunction?
I'm not sure that I follow that, but my whole
Do
problem
you want me
is
to
that
try? Can I try and clarify a little bit what Eli's asking you?
I'll leave it up to Eli. What do
Yeah, I
you?
mean, yeah, if he wants to interject the clarifying point, that's fine.
So what Eli's asking you is, how can you actually tell a difference between something that is, from a stance independent view, something that is functioning or dysfunctioning? If it's stance independent, how would you be able to tell the difference between the two of them if there's no proper there, if there's no actual intent behind the way it's supposed to function? How could you tell if, like, let's say,
I might understand. Let me ask.
how would you tell the planet was orbiting a star wrong?
Let me ask if I understand what you're saying, and if not, you can try to convey it again. So when you're asking, so we have these two notions: stance independent function 1 and stance independent function 2, and the first is like the non-normative one, basically. So you're asking me on the notion of stance independent function that I gave. How can I distinguish something that is stance independently functioning from stance independently not functioning?
Like, okay,
Yeah,
how could you,
how
if
do you
there's
do
no
that stance
intent behind it, how
independently?
could you know that a heart
Yeah,
was
so
pumping wrongly?
so just
Or
to be
incorrectly?
clear, on the notion that I gave, stance independent, or sorry, what was it? Let me just not stance independent function 1. That is just supposed to be basically a synonym for what a thing is doing. So I understand the distinction between what a thing is doing and what it's not doing. But if you're going to start talking about whether it's doing something properly or not, that's going back to
No,
stance
I
independent
forget
function.
proper. I'm asking you how you
You have
know
to let
this.
me finish my points, or else it's not fair, because then you don't get to hear my thing and you only hear your thing, and that's not right. Just let me finish. So I can understand a distinction between what a thing is doing and what a thing is not doing. That's not confusing to me. But when you talk about stance independent proper function, right, as in stance independent function 2, that's the concept that I don't understand.
Stance independent function 2 is just stance independent dysfunction. Okay?
No,
When we talk
not
about,
no.
because you're saying that
No.
listen,
Again, there's stance independent function 1 and stance independent dysfunction 1. There's stance independent function 2 and stance independent dysfunction 2. Stance independent function 1, and let me finish. Okay, it feels like you're kind of not listening.
no,
Yeah,
sorry. What is stance
it's okay.
independent function 2?
So
Correct? Help me figure
that,
out what you mean by that.
yeah, that, like, it's like we could, it's like a 4x4 grid. Like, let's just do like SIF. Here, I'll write this here. Stance independent function 1. It's probably, actually, this is something that obviously should be drawn out, so I don't know why I didn't do this before. F2 and okay, so
Yeah, ask
it's
yourself,
like
what are you doing, bro? You can draw it out.
Yeah.
Well, dude, you're the one who brought up like this 1 and 2 stuff.
Well, yeah.
I just have a really simple question, but
that's fine.
really quick, can I ask
Hold
you
on,
one
Eli,
simple question?
hold on. Let ask yourself finish
All
what you're
right.
saying.
Okay.
All right.
Wait, I did a typo, so just 1 second. So in VC text, You see, we have stance independent function 1 and stance independent dysfunction 1, and we have stance independent function 2 and stance independent dysfunction 2. So we don't want to be shifting randomly between these, right? So stance independent function 1 is just a thing is doing something. Stance independent dysfunction 1 is just a thing is not doing something. Stance independent function 2 and dysfunction 2 are basically the same thing, but they're about whether it's doing the proper thing. And that's the one I don't understand. I don't understand SIF2 or SID2. I do understand SIF1 and SID1. And to Eli's last point, SID1 is not the same thing as SIF2. Those are not the same.
Okay, here's the problem. You're acting like, so when you say stance independent function 1 is what the thing is doing, stop right there, forget the rest of it. How do you know that stance independent function is what a thing is doing and that that's not actually stance independent dysfunction? And how do you know that stands independently? Because you're just saying that, and that sounds like a stance dependent claim.
That's how I'm understanding the word. That's just what I'm understanding it to mean.
Well, no, so this is where I'm saying you going into all these different, grid or whatever is missing the point that I'm making. Okay,
but the
when you
grid or
make
whatever,
this statement,
that's not fair. That's
now
like,
you're cutting it. Hold on,
but it's a bit unfair, though, don't you think?
Let me talk. Let me finish up.
But you didn't,
no, you can think while I respond.
Understand my point, though. You said grid or whatever, which made me think you didn't take the time to understand my point.
Well, no, I understand that you have the 1 and 2, and then you have the way that you understand them, and then you have you have stance independent function 1, stance independent dysfunction 1, stance independent function 2, stance independent dysfunction 2, and you have different understandings between the 1 and the 2. I get that, okay, but I'm saying that in just the term stance independent function, okay, you're saying that is an object doing what it does. And I'm saying I'm saying that's a stance dependent claim, because how do you know stance independently that a stance independent function is a thing doing what it does isn't actually the stance independent dysfunction? How do you know that stance independently? This is a very simple question I'm asking you.
Yeah, we might hit a bit of an impasse here, because I'm going to say that I probably won't answer it until I'm convinced that it connects to the dialectic properly. So for me, the whole dialectic from start to bottom... That's
convenient.
Well, you might think that, but that's still what I believe. So
from
my point... Let me talk. Yeah, from my point of view, this whole dialectic, it starts with the conclusion of Jimbob's argument, which is there is no proper function. My whole qualm with that is I don't understand what proper function means if it's used in a stance independent way, and if it's used in a stance dependent way, then the conclusion is actually false. So that's kind of the dilemma that I caught Jimbob with. Now, if from there, what I'm looking for, if you want to take the pathway of actually stance independent proper function is a coherent concept, and I'm going to convey that to you, I'm going, okay, that's fine. And I'm trying to understand everything that you're doing as some way to communicate the concept to me. Now, I understand that your move to communicate the concept was to go, okay, let's remove the word proper, and you understand what this means currently, right? So that is like stance independent function 1 right there. And I go, yes, I understand that. That's fine. You say, oh, well, actually, it's SIF2 all along. Gotcha, bitch. And I'm like, no, well, that's just switching the concept. That's
because in order to say stance independent function.
Let me finish.
Hold on.
If you had have asked the question from the start, being clear that you're using SIF2, I would have just said I don't understand, right? So it's not going to work for you to just shift semantics when I say I understand it to the thing I don't understand and then declare that I do understand it. That's just changing the term.
It's not shifting. What I'm pointing out is that what you're calling stance independent function 2 is implied in stance independent function 1, and I don't know how you're not tracking this.
I don't understand.
Because you have to come to a distinction between function and dysfunction within stance independent function 1. Yeah, and I'm asking, how do you do that stance independently, and then you short circuit and pretend like I'm saying something that doesn't compute and doesn't track? This is a very simple criticism.
Can we not do the whole you're doing this, you're weaseling, you're this, you're that? Like, I feel like you've been polite a lot of the time. Let's just stick to that.
Well,
So
I'm trying to. I'm actually holding back. I just feel like you acted like a giant ass earlier, and it's frustrating. So I'm just trying to
okay,
get you pinned
well,
down on the
I
problem
don't,
here, and
I
you're
don't,
doing the same thing where you do these pedantic
I don't.
kind of, well,
Okay,
I really don't quite understand what you mean. I
it
think you do,
feels.
but it's hard to answer. So it's a
Look,
very convenient
I,
answer to say you
I,
don't understand when you
I
do, and you
can
just understand you're fucking pinned.
I can just as well say like, okay, you understand you're getting annihilated, you're making something up, blah blah blah. Like, I mean, let's just have the actual conversation. The like doing
Right, right. And I'm having the conversation.
you're
I'm wanting you to give me the answer for how you make a
I
distinction
don't
between
feel
function and
I
dysfunction
don't feel
within
like I
stance
don't
independent
feel
function
I
one.
let me talk. Let me talk. So on stance independent function and dysfunction one, the distinction there is just what a thing doing something versus not doing it. There's no normativity baked in. There's no properness or anything like that. We're just talking about, is it orbiting the center of the galaxy? Is it not? So I don't understand how you're telling
That's
me.
your
One
claim.
second.
Hold
One
on. Can I
second.
try and
One
clarify
second.
for Eli real
No,
quick? I
no,
think I can see where
let
Eli's
me
getting
just let
caught
me
up.
for a second here, Stillborn. So, just to be clear, that's the notion that I'm saying I understand. If you shift semantics over to the notion that I don't understand, I'm just going to say, wait, that's the thing I don't understand again.
Okay, is that a stance dependent understanding?
Hold on, Eli. Hold on a sec, real quick. I'm
No,
just
no, I
gonna.
want him to answer this. Is that a stance dependent understanding of
I,
stance independent function one, that it's doing the thing that it does?
so I don't see how that's relevant to the dialectic, because the thing you're supposed to be doing is commune. Yeah, well, I mean, look,
No,
if we're going to do the meta, I think basically that you have a point and that I respond to it by saying, I'm not clear how that connects to the dialectic, and it's kind of your burden to show that to me. And if you can, then obviously I'll start addressing
okay,
it. But right
I can do
now,
that right now.
right, wait, just a second. Just a second. Right now, it just looks to me like I grant that I understand one concept, I grant that I don't understand another, and you're telling me for some reason if I understand the first, I must understand the second. I don't see why that's the case.
Okay. What I'm pointing out, how this connects back to the original point and the conclusion that Jimbob made is that so whenever you talk about instance independent function one, and you're talking about function, and you're talking about that in the dialectic of it's either functioning or it's dysfunctioning, functioning has an implication that dysfunction would be
Improper?
disproper is not improper. That's the word I was looking
No,
for.
it
That
doesn't. Not on.
dysfunction would be
So
improper
that's the
and
confusion.
function would be proper.
That's the confusion right there. Remember, SIF1 and SID1 are non-normative. There's no properness baked in. Those are just notions where all we're talking about is if a thing is doing something or not. So that's what you're getting kind of confused by.
Okay. Well, I think that my pushback and my argument is that I would disagree. I think that if something is functioning, it's not just neutral. It has an objective, okay, that is proper to the function.
That's just going to
Okay.
SIF2 though. Again, like just replace here. Why don't you do it like this? Instead of using proper function, just talk about a thing doing something and see if the argument goes through. And I think you'll notice
Well,
that
okay,
it
but what if
doesn't.
what if I say that a thing doing something is actually its dysfunction?
When you say
What if I
dysfunction,
say stance independent dysfunction one is when a thing is doing what it does? How do you know stance independently that that's not the case?
that sounds like a different meaning. I thought we were talking about where stance
Oh,
independent.
right. I think exactly. So what I'm pointing out is that your meaning of function is completely stance dependent. That's what I'm trying to show you.
But what your task is to communicate the concept of stance independent proper function to me. That's what you're not doing right now.
Okay. Well, what I'm pointing out is that stance independent function doesn't exist in your worldview. Again, if we go back to Jim Bob's conclusion, and I'm saying I'm going to reformulate the argument and just take out the word proper, I can make the same argument that Jim Bob's making and say there is no stance independent function in the evolutionist, proponent, materialist, atheist worldview.
Just to be
Because
clear,
it
I'm
takes.
not like all of those things, by the way. Like
So what's your position?
Well, let's not do the what exactly are you, but I'm a bit more moderate.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I'm probably like, so I don't know that I'm a
Do you believe in a
materialist. I don't.
teleological
Okay,
universe?
but if you need to calm down just a bit. Like I'm happy to talk to you and hear out your criticisms. I think that's obvious. I've been talking
Sure.
for quite a while, but you can't get that heated. You got to chill out a little bit. So just to humor you, like, I don't really identify with the term materialist. I'm not sure that that would describe me properly. Atheist, not exactly. Like, I mean, it's going to depend on the gods. In some cases, I'm just agnostic. And evolution proponent, I think that evolution is, as far as I'm aware, though I don't know a lot about it, I wouldn't be prepared for like an empirical debate on whether it's the most robust theory or something. But that's my understanding is that it is, when we try to account for like the complexity of life or something like that. But no, okay, just to be clear, I'm gonna try a different kind of move in this debate. It is the same move as before, but it's a way that might make it more obvious. Whenever you talk about SIF1, I'm gonna cut in and I'm gonna say just talk about a thing doing something. Because I think that what's happening is you're shifting between senses and thinking I'm committed to something that I'm not. So I think if we prevent
saying that's a stance-dependent claim.
Okay, when you say stance, let's just trace through the dialectic. So there is Jimbob's conclusion is there is no proper function. Now, he actually, to be fair, he shifted to saying that he does mean the concept in a stance-dependent way after a while. He wants to talk about function as being relative to tasks or something like that. But my whole qualm with that is that you get a kind of dilemma, basically, where if proper function there is being used in a stance-independent way, then it's not really clear what it means. If it's being used in a stance-dependent way, then the conclusion is actually false. So I'm kind of looking at his conclusion and going, okay, it seems like it's incoherent or false. Now, the task that you have, basically, if you want to go down the stance-independent pathway, is to convey to me what that means so that I understand the concept. Now, if you want to convey it by saying, okay, we remove the word proper, and then you have some notion of this, and I go, yes, the notion I'm signing off on there, stance independent function 1, that is just a thing doing something or a thing not doing something. If you then tell me that because I understand that, I must also understand SIF2 and SID2, well, I don't see how that follows, and I don't seem to have those concepts. So that's kind of your burden to show that, to convey those concepts.
Okay. Well, what I'm pointing out is, so repeat just so I understand. What did you say at the very end is my burden to do?
To convey to me the high level burden is to convey what stance independent proper function means, but down the kind of pathway you went there, maybe you're going to do that by somehow showing me how stance independent function 1 somehow commits me to some kind of understanding of stance independent function 2. But at a high level, what you're trying to do is just get me to actually understand what stance independent proper function is. SIF2 and
Right.
SID2.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and like I said, I'm basically modifying the argument, taking out. I think it still continues to work if you take out the word proper, because as you said, stance independent function 1 does have a necessary commitment to what you're calling
Wait,
stance
you said
independent
stance independent
function
function
2.
1, so just replace stance independent function 1 with a thing doing something.
Well, I know, but so you keep saying that as if that's the simple. Why are you interrupting me when you bitch and moan when I interrupt you, dude?
I don't bitch and moan whenever you interrupt. Actually, I'm not anti-interruption.
Every single time I have, you gotta let me talk. I'm not sure what the point of this is if you don't let me talk.
I think that's not true, and you don't need to do the mocking voice. I think that I've actually let you cut me off various times. I think that normal human conversation involves interruption, and I actually just wholeheartedly reject the debate norms about like equal speaking time, non-interruption. I think that's all like low-level trash,
great.
basically.
I'm glad.
An interruption that I think will help as a third party who's been listening. I think I've identified a conundrum that maybe is going over both heads.
I'll let Eli choose, because when I'm debating someone, I don't really like others to pipe in. So, I mean, what do you want?
Let me just.
That's fair.
Well, let me just get this one point across, okay, of what's happening here is you're saying stance independent function, okay?
Replace that with something doing something.
Right.
I'm telling you to do that.
Say that.
Just one second. Just the reason I'm telling you to do that is because it'll stop the ambiguity. So continue. But instead of talking
here's
about
the thing, I'm not going to grant you that, because once you say that the meaning.
Sorry, I lost track.
I'm not going to
grant me what?
I'm not going to. Dudes. Okay. That
I'm just
when
asking.
you say, right, when you say stance independent function is something doing what it's doing, you have now removed the stance independent element by making your stance dependent definition of function being something doing what it's doing. So now you're in a performative contradiction.
I don't understand that. Are you trying to communicate what stance independent proper function is right now, or are you doing something else?
Yes. So look, stance independent function. Again, I've said forget proper. I'm modifying the argument. You're dealing with me
Okay,
after
yeah.
after Jimbob's, and I'm saying remove proper. The conclusion is stance independent function. Okay.
And by that,
What I
just be clear about the sense, so we're on the same page. By that, you mean a thing doing something.
well, wait a
That's
minute.
not what he means.
Not
You should let me jump in.
no. Okay, go ahead. Now I'll let the other guy. I think he might have a good
Yeah, this is
addition.
big
Go
tech,
ahead.
and I think I can make it quick. I'm noticing that I think that we in this conversation are thinking that by removing the word proper, we have actually modified it, when actually we have not. And the word function, even in itself, invokes propriety. And we're
Thank
using
you.
the word function as if it doesn't mean that there's something proper to a function, meaning the colloquial noun, the way that we describe it, is an activity or a purpose natural to or intended for a person or a thing. So it implies a purpose or intent to a thing. So when we say function, we're actually talking about something being right or wrong in its action, when we really might be better off using the word like just action or operation or something like that, because it's more impartial and objective. Function is sort of naturally subjective. So we're trying to define an oxymoron. We're trying to say a stance independent subjectively right or wrong action. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I'm not sure I follow
Well, so
that,
but
but what?
really quick, okay, I want to just bounce off that, and then I promise I'll let you go talk. But one thing I don't want to change about stance independent function here is that, um, from at least my worldview as an Orthodox
Wait,
Christian, and this is
to be
where
clear,
it
when
does get a
sorry,
little bit into
wait, I
tag.
want you to finish. But when you said stance independent function, there, were you meaning a thing doing something?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so be clear. If you mean stance independent proper
That's what I
function,
was getting into.
I know, but I'm just saying, because I think that once we're clear about this, it all just kind of falls apart. So when you're using if I hear ever stance independent function without the word proper, I'm gonna kind of cut in and go, do you mean a thing doing something? If you say proper, then I'll know you're talking about that notion. So talk about stance
Well,
independent
okay.
proper function.
Yes, he
or talk
does
about
mean
the
a thing doing something. And if he
Okay,
doesn't, he
no,
needs to give
wait,
an
sorry,
example of
I don't want
otherwise.
Well,
I don't want a
hold on. Okay, let me get in here. Let me get in here. So there's a lot coming at. So I do mean a thing doing. Here's the distinction here is that I'm talking about teleology.
That's not
The
that
world
okay.
has
Yes,
teleology.
but that is
Hold on.
stance in yeah, no, that is stance
Let me.
independent proper function. That's not SIF1.
Well, again, this is what the gentleman who just spoke that you apparently didn't listen to is that
I
functionality.
did listen
In
to
order
him.
for something
I
to
did
have
wait,
function,
one
okay,
second. I'm not
but
going to have
dude,
that said. One second. I'm not going to have that
come
said
on.
about me. One
I'm not
second.
going to
Slow
let you
down. Slow
interrupt in the
down.
middle of my
You're not going to
sentences.
win. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to let that be said about me. I listened carefully to him, and I was actually talking with Big Tech before any of you were in here for a little bit. I didn't understand what he said, but that doesn't mean I wasn't listening to him.
Okay. Fair enough. Then you didn't understand what he said. Now,
Yeah.
let me point out that what he said was, and this is what I was saying to you from the very beginning that you keep rejecting, is that functionality, propriety, something being proper to the function, and then the inverse, dysfunction, would be disproper to the function. So something being proper is in fact baked into the word function. My stance independent function, my notion of stance independent function
And there
comes
you
from
mean a thing doing
the idea
something.
of the comes from,
Wait, no,
again,
no, no.
it's
There,
grounded in,
again,
hold
no,
on,
no, but no, because
yeah,
that's the
you're
move.
floundering,
I have told you that that's the move. I'm not going to let happen, right? When you just say stance independent function without any qualification, I'm going to ask you, do you just mean a thing doing something? I told you before. I don't know why you call it floundering.
I do,
Wait a
but you're not
second.
letting me finish. You explain.
I've told you before that whenever you do that, I'm going to interrupt by getting you to clarify what sense you're using. So that's not me trying to steal the
Okay, but guess what? I
dialectic.
can't
That's
clarify if you fucking interrupt me.
1 second. That's not me trying to steal the dialectic. That's not me floundering. I'm happy to have you go right back to exactly what you're saying. It's just me forcing clarity. It's just listen. It's just me forcing clarity on a term, and it's going to keep happening if you keep using the term ambiguously. So don't get mad at me because I've told you that's how I'm approaching the conversation. You being able to continue uninterrupted is contingent largely on just not doing that.
Well, no, it's contingent on you shutting the fuck up and actually letting me
Yes.
clarify because
Yes,
I
but I've
can't
told
clarify
you,
to you
but
if
I've
you
told
fucking
you the
interrupt me.
conditions. No, but it is contingent on me shutting the fuck up. And I've told you the conditions under which I am most likely to shut the fuck up. At least I've told
Right.
you.
So when you
Wait
start
a second.
refuting me, I'll
At
start
least 1
interrupting you.
second,
That's what
please,
you're saying.
please,
When you
please,
start
please. 1
refuting my
second.
position, I'll
1
interrupt
second,
you.
dude.
That's
1
great.
second. 1 second.
Nice
One
fucking debate
second. 1
tactics there.
second. 1 second. I've at least told you a sufficient condition for when I'll interrupt, which is when function, stance independent function, when any of that is used in a ambiguous way where I'm not clear if you're talking about proper function or not. I've told you that's when I'll cut in. So yes, it's contingent on me shutting up.
Yes.
And I've told you when a condition for me not shutting up, which is when you're ambiguous about which sense you're using. So expect more of it if you're
And I've already explained to you that propriety is baked into functionality. And if
when
you have
you say
trouble understanding
functionality
that,
right
I'm
there,
sorry.
that's the exact same thing. When you say functionality there, are you talking about a thing doing something or are you talking about proper function?
Again, what we're talking, so I think that if you're saying a thing doing something is its function, there is a presupposition that that thing that it's doing is proper so that it is in fact its function and not its dysfunction, because its
No, when
dysfunction
you said
would
function
be
right there, when you did it again,
improper
you did it
to the
again. When you
function.
said function right there, were you talking about a thing doing something? You're gonna have to slow down and grapple through the semantic distinction I'm forcing on you, or you're just gonna keep getting stuck in the same thing.
No, okay, so back to what this is.
There's need
This
for
is
a
not hard
moderator
to
to
understand,
provide some
actually.
translation here.
Let's just talk to
This is
Eli.
no, yeah. I wish I could actually get some words out here.
You can, as
What
long as you
the
don't try to point. No, I will not let someone paint
No,
me
because you're
unfairly.
basically
I
saying
will
when you
not let.
start
I will
refuting my
stop.
position,
I
I'm
will
going to
not.
interrupt, and that shows that you're full of shit right there.
Okay, I will not let
Yeah,
someone.
here he goes.
I will not let someone paint me unfairly. Like I will not let them speak. I will absolutely let you speak. I've told you a specific problem I have and a specific condition under which I will interject. There's nothing unfair about that, and I will continue to do it.
So every time you don't
Eli, do you
understand
understand what
something,
he's saying right there? Do you understand
all right,
the thing he's
maybe
saying?
you give it back to me in non-sophistry terms.
See again, you're.
Yeah, that's okay. I know what he means. That's
Try
like a bit
harder,
of
dude.
ad hom, but that's a bit of an ad hom. But
I've not called you a
Try
sophist.
harder.
Okay, well, wait. If you're just gonna
what he's
go to that level,
can I try at it?
Well,
Can I try to explain to him what I hear you saying?
Just 1 second, Eli. If you're just kind of at a point that you're sort of upset and you don't want to continue, then
No, I think that you're basically saying, no, you giving me the conditions on which you're going to interrupt my train of thought is what the losing party does. You weasel pig snake.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't think that I'm a weasel pig snake. I also don't think it's what the losing party does, but it is what I'm.
You know what?
It is
I'm
what
going to
I'm
interrupt you every time you act like a weasel pig snake. Because hey, I don't let people act like a weasel pig snake in Jimbob's discourse.
It is what I'm going to do, though. And if you
Is that what we do when we give conditionals on when we're going to stop people's train of thought?
If you set a similar boundary, if you said like, look, dude, I have.
Yeah, my boundary is when you act like a fucking pig snake, I'm going to interrupt you. And unfortunately, it's every time you open your mouth.
I think that it's actually 1 second. I think that it's actually relatively obvious to the listener that you are just interrupting arbitrarily, and that I'm interrupting largely under a specific condition that I've actually made explicit. There's a difference there. One is fair and one's not. And if one is more pig snaky, although I don't want to be mean, it is the one you're doing, which is just interrupting arbitrarily.
Let me describe
no, Bob.
Why you're interrupting.
Not Bob, but Big Tech. I know you're trying to offer a point in my favor, but I just don't like dogpiling. So if Eli wants to stop and then like I just talk to you or something, that's fine. But
I'm listening. Yeah. I want to hear Big Tech's point. Maybe he can explain it to me in a way that I can work around so that I don't have an interruption from you that you say you're going to do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the way I'm seeing it is that the real the disagreement here, or the point of contention, is around the definition of what we're meaning by and he's invoking SFI1, SFI2, proper versus improper. But what we're talking about is when we say function, when we say stance independent function.
Sorry, I don't need to cut you off. Are you explaining a thing to me or to him right now? When you say we,
to him, to Eli. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to translate for you to Eli, rather than you having to interrupt Eli and he being upset about that. Right. Yeah, I'm trying to overcome this interruption.
No, I just wasn't following. Cycle. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So and you can correct me if I'm wrong in representing you, but I'm trying to represent you to him in a way that now there's been a translation that.
I just didn't understand if we was me and him or you and him. So or me and you or you and him. But now I do. So,
all right. Yeah, I'll use the pronoun Eli. Ask yourself, needs you, Eli, to say what you're saying. If you can't, I think it would be as simple as this. If you could say what you're saying without saying stance independent function, unless what you mean by unless you can acknowledge first that simply what you mean by stance independent function, you just mean what the thing is doing. So say more about that, but just very quickly, if you could just say when a thing does what the thing's doing, that's all I mean by stance independent function. So just the activity of the thing, the cause and effect nature of things happening in time and space. When a thing is doing a thing, that's what I mean. Stance independent function, nothing more.
And since Eli invited you into the conversation,
I want to, but really quick, let me speak, dude. Let me get in here and respond.
Just 1 second, dude.
Oh my fucking God.
Since Eli invited you into the conversation, just to clarify, do you understand why I'm doing that, Big Tech?
I believe that I do, yes, and I think that it's reasonable.
Could you
I think
explain?
that.
Well,
I think that.
Yeah.
Can I get in here and jump off of this?
Well, you invited him in, and I just want to ask him a follow up. That's
for a clarifying point, but sure, go ahead, and then I'm going to address this.
Sure.
I think it's a valid question, actually, even though I understand, Eli, that it might be frustrating because you're ready to answer and he's asking me to say more. But it's even increased, if you'll allow it, more clarification will come from me answering the question he just asked me, which is why is he insisting that you, like he said, disambiguate? So we're using a term that is becoming sort of ambiguous when we say stance independent function. If what we really mean is just a thing doing a thing, if we disambiguate the language and we get down to what we actually mean by that word, which is a bit of a mouthful, stance independent function, then we can just get sort of like down to brass tacks and we can finally get to the conclusion of the disagreement, what we actually mean by what we're saying. And we can get to, do we agree or disagree, rather than chasing ourselves like our tail in a circle and then getting upset at each other. I think that's kind of what when you say stance independent function, he's interrupting you and saying, don't you just mean this? And I don't think he's trying to be a dick. He's trying to just get clarity.
Yeah, that's basically right.
Sure.
It's just because when you have the two concepts to switch between, the clarity allows it to seem like a point is being made that just kind of evaporates once you add the clarity. That's why.
But now my original argument about the whole idea of a stance independent function is evaporating because I have a specific argument about what this means. So I will answer it again, and I will grant that yes, it is a thing doing what it does. However, in my worldview, there is a justification for why it's doing what it does and why that is in fact its function and not its dysfunction. Because again, I wholeheartedly push back that there's a difference between proper function and function as it is proper to function and not improper dysfunction. I don't think that you can divorce propriety if you're going to say the word function, even if you mean a thing doing what it's doing, because you're assigning a thing doing what it's doing with function and not dysfunction. So what my original question going all the way back is, how do you determine that a thing is doing what it's doing is its function and not its dysfunction in a stance independent way? This is the question that you have ran from.
When you say how do I?
Oh, I have a great answer for that, but it's not my turn to speak.
Yeah, when you say how do I determine that a thing, I forget the phrasing, but a thing doing what it's doing is its function or its stance independent function. That's just how I was understanding us as defining the term. That's what I thought we meant when we say SIF1.
Okay, right. But what I'm asking is a more epistemic question from, and again, it's weird that, like, now that I understand you might possibly not be an evolution proponent, this is kind of disconnected from Jim. I mean, if you're going to critique an argument that's against evolution proponents, then you are kind of taking the position of the person he's arguing against, right? So that is deeply involved in the argumentation. What we're saying from an evolution proponent standpoint is that there is no teleology. Dysfunction and function are completely stance dependent and a matter of opinion. If it's just doing what it's doing, how do you know that you can assign function to that and not dysfunction if you're not stance dependently assigning that into that category?
Yeah,
that's the entire argument Jimbob's trying to make.
I think I'm probably going to say something similar to what I said before, which is that I'm not really clear how that connects to the dialectic. Like, are you conveying to me right now what stance-independent proper function is, or are you trying to make some other argument or something?
I get I modified the argument to be just simply stance independent function. Because again, I don't believe that you can remove propriety from function because proper indicates function, improper indicates dysfunction.
Right, but then that changes my answer, right? So if you say, when I ask you if you understand what proper function is, and when I say that, I actually mean stance independent proper function, then I don't say yes to that. I say, no, I don't know what that means.
Well, I know, but that's why I asked you if you understood what stance independent function means, and you said yes.
When
and
you
I'm
say
just
that,
I'm
do you
just
just
taking
mean
the
a thing
same.
doing what it's doing?
Yes. How do you know that that's function and not dysfunction?
That's how we were
Stance
defining it.
independently.
That's how we were defining it.
Okay, so it's your proprietary definition.
It's how we're defining the concept in the discussion.
Okay, that's stance dependent. That's stance dependent. So it's not a stance independent function. It's a stance dependent function because function in your worldview, in this case, in regards to the human body, is a stance dependent notion that you're saying, well, it functions according to my stance dependent notion of what it means to function.
I don't know.
That's the whole freaking argument I'm trying to get across to you.
I don't know, dude. Also, I'm kind of not understanding how that's an argument. I think arguments have like premises and conclusions, and I was sort of I wasn't really understanding.
Well, no, but this is going back to the first thing that I said when I talked to you, is that the whole point of Jimbob's argument when he goes to Professor Dave and says, does your brain actually have a stance independent purpose? And then Professor Dave says, no. Then guess what? If the brain functions to make true statements, but it's all stance dependent, then truth has now become subjective in the evolution proponents' worldview, and we have no basis to listen to what they have to say because we can invalidate their true statements with our own stance dependent true statements. That's been my whole argument, and you ran around the table trying to claim you don't understand and not get pinned down when that's all that the argument is being made here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the whole like attributing intention to me. Like, isn't it also plausible that what's going on is I don't understand what you mean when you say stance independent proper function, and I'm trying to get you to clear that up, and you're like trying to do some reductio or something like that.
I'm not talking about stance independent proper function. I've already said I'm talking about stance independent function.
Okay, but when
that's
you
the
say
same
that,
thing.
That
We just went over that. Those are the same. That was my point.
It depends.
No, he said no. He doesn't believe it's the same thing.
It's not about what I believe. It's about how we're defining the terms.
Like, what you believe? Okay. Yeah. What do you believe the definition is, dude?
Well, I'm asking you because you're the one using the term, right? So if you're asking me, do I understand what proper function is? And by that, you mean a thing doing what it does. I understand that. If you're asking, do I understand what proper function is? And by that, you mean stance independent proper function, then no, I don't.
Okay. All I've asked is, how do you know that it's the stance independent function and not the stance independent dysfunction? You go, I don't know what that means. And all I'm trying to point out to you is you have to have a stance dependent definition to say that something is functioning rather than dysfunctioning.
I'm not following. Is what you're doing right now somehow supposed to communicate to me what stance independent proper function is or not?
No, that's not what he's doing. Can I help again?
Eli, do you feel like you've kind of like do you feel like you've kind of hit a point that you're sort of going in circles, or do you feel like you are able to?
Not really. Look, you keep trying to put the word proper in my mouth, and I've already said that I'm rejecting the word proper.
Absolutely do not. I'm trying to get you to clarify which sense you're using. I am absolutely not forcing you to use the proper sense. My whole point from the very start has been, if in Jimbob's conclusion there is no proper function is being used to refer to stance-independent proper function that I don't understand what it means. And on the other hand, if it's being used to just refer to a thing doing something, then that is something I do understand. So I'm asking you, are you trying to clarify what stance-independent proper function is or not?
Okay, so Stance. So here's what you're missing here.
No, please
Is that
answer that so I know what we're
stop
doing.
interrupting, bro.
No.
Stop interrupting.
Again,
Stance in.
another condition where I'll
Stance.
interrupt is when I'm not clear if we're actually
Why do you get to run the fucking show, dude?
Another, you could do the same.
You don't get to
Ask
fucking
yourself.
tell me
Ask
when you
yourself.
get to interrupt. I'll just talk over you.
Ask yourself. You asked Eli a question. He's trying to answer the question. I think it's fair that you let him answer, and then
one second. An answer doesn't just mean saying words in response to something. The reason that I interjected was because it was actually not clear if what he was saying was an answer. What I asked was whether.
Well, then wait and let him
answer. Because again, these are debate norms. These are debate norms that I don't agree with. One second. These are debate norms that I don't agree with. So I'm fine with.
You don't agree when you ask somebody a question that they should answer it?
1 second. I asked him a question, and if he wants to answer it, that's the right thing to do. But that said, just starting talking and it not being clear to me if it's an answer or not, that's something that I probably won't put up with. So I'm likely to interject. I'm likely to one second. I'm likely to interject, and I'm likely to just go, okay, before you elaborate, just clarify, just give the yes or no to answer my thing and then elaborate, rather than elaborating first, which to me is indistinguishable from just not answering. I don't know if you're going to come around to an answer.
That's a fair thing to say. It's like, okay, give the yes or no and then the caveat or elaboration. Yes. That's fair.
Sure.
Okay. Ask me a yes or no question. Ask yourself.
I'll ask yes, and it's the same question. It's not just a random question. But yeah, the question is, are you trying to convey to me what stance-independent proper function means?
No, and let me tell you why. Because I already said you can remove proper. It's redundant. I'm saying the same argument Jimbob was making works if you just use stance-independent function.
And when you say does that mean a thing doing proper function? Remember, you just hit my interruption condition. When you say that, does that mean a thing doing what it does?
Yes, I will grant it for the sake of moving the conversation forward.
Okay.
However, what now we can get to my question is, how do you know that a stance-independent function is what the thing is doing, and that's not actually the stance-independent dysfunction? And everybody listen to how he's going to say, I don't quite understand what that means.
I think I am going to say something like that because I need to understand how the dialectic works. And I think it should be, for a little meta point here, pretty obvious to anyone listening that I'm happy to answer things as long as I'm convinced that they fit into the dialectic. If it's not obvious how it connects to me, then I end up kind of going back a level.
Okay, what is the dialectic that you want this question to fit into?
Well, basically, Jimbob has this argument, and the conclusion is there is no proper function. So,
dude, you're dealing with me. I just said the same argument can be made with stance-independent function. Okay.
Okay.
Forget, you keep bringing proper into the argument, and I'm telling you when you're dealing with me to fucking discard it.
Okay, I'm probably going to keep referring to the thing that I was originally talking to Jimbob about, because if your thing doesn't somehow connect to that,
because it's the only thing you can be a pedantic douchebag about.
I'm not trying to be a douchebag. I just want to talk about the thing that I was arguing.
Well, yeah, because you can get hung up on that fucking word. I say remove the word. You're like, no, but if we remove the word, I can't get hung up on it.
I didn't say anything
asshole.
I didn't say anything. You don't have to call me an asshole. I didn't say anything about we can't remove the word. It's just we have to maintain clarity as we change around the words that we're using. So if you
and I'm trying to describe to you that if you say something has a stance-independent function, which you said you clearly understood, proper is baked into the word function because it implies not dysfunction. Proper to function. The improper version of that would be to dysfunction.
It sounds like you are trying to get me to understand what stance-independent proper function is.
I think you do, and I think you're pretending that you don't because you're a sophist douchebag.
You said that's not. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought a minute ago you said that's not what you're trying to do. Now you're saying it is. So just answer this clearly for me. Are you trying to communicate to me what stance-independent proper function is? Yes or no? You can elaborate after.
Okay. No, not when you are getting hung up on that word. I'm saying you can remove that word and the problem still stands because proper is in fact baked into it. I'm just not using the language that you are asking me if I'm trying to convince you in that language. I'm using different language to convey to you the same fucking point that Jimbob's argument makes.
You don't have to be so harsh, dude.
Well, dude, because you're being intentionally annoying. and not understanding what I'm saying. And he keeps saying I don't understand it, and that has nothing to do with the effectiveness of the argument Jimbob makes. And you came in here going, "Can anybody hear me? Can anybody hear me? Hello, hello, hello." When you knew you were muted while he talked to his live stream, you're annoying as fuck. So I don't have any fucking reason to not treat you like shit because you're annoying as fuck on purpose. It's a fake piety signaling good faith. Just shut the fuck up and answer the fucking question.
I don't think so. And I can tell you, I mean, a little derail.
God.
I can tell you why I do that.
Are your pearls being clutched?
Well, now
Are
you're
your
just
how many pearls are in your fist right now?
You're doing the arbitrary interruption thing again. Like, again, I don't mind some interruptions. It's normal.
No, I made a clarifier that when you're acting like a pig snake, I'm going to interrupt you, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
All right. So, look, you said just one.
So you have no stance independent distinction between what makes something doing what it does a function and not a dysfunction, right?
Now it feels like I'm not able to communicate. So a little meta
oh my
point,
God.
A little meta point. You said
write about it in your diary.
A little meta point. You said that when Jimbob's talking, I'm sitting there going, "Am I muted? Am I muted?" So, you know, you said that I'm being bad faith or like piety signaling or something. Like, I mean, I guess you can have that interpretation, but that's really not it. I also, when you said annoying you intentionally,
When you interrupt based on the virtue of "I will not stand for somebody doing this to my character," that's piety signaling, dude. It's pearl clutching, piety signaling bullshit.
You have no idea where I'm going. So just let me just say what I'm saying. So, one thing, intentionally annoying. That it kind of depends what you mean, because I do understand that my approach will probably make you mad. Sorry, there's a little.
This is like fucking arguing with Jordan Peterson. It's like, it depends on what you mean by intentionally and annoying. I mean, in one sense, the annoying is in the intent, and the intent is to annoy.
Yeah, I mean, things depend on semantics.
Depends what you mean, bucko.
Yeah, like if by that you meant like I'm a starfish.
I just want you to deal with the question that I presented to you, which is how do you know the difference, or how do you make a distinction between an object doing what it does as its function and not its dysfunction in a stance-independent way? If you can't answer that, you're cooked, you're done.
You're misunderstanding my stubbornness. So I'm going to try to say the thing I was saying a minute ago. So
No,
like a little,
I've dealt with 1,000 of you, dude. I've dealt with 1,000 of you. I don't misunderstand it.
Okay. I said I think you're misunderstanding how stubborn I am, because you seem to think that at some point I'm going to start answering the question. It's like, no, not unless you can.
Okay, well then you lose. Congratulations, your whole argument was retarded, and everybody sees it.
Not unless I become convinced that it connects the dialectic. But
what is the dialectic that it must connect to?
Let me make the little meta point that I was making. So, because one thing that will always sort of make me go to the meta is if someone tries to say things about my character. Then I'm always like, oh, okay, debate is on hold, gonna clear up all that, and then we can go back to the debate. So yeah, you said intentionally annoying. So it kind of depends how we mean that. Sorry, don't get mad. It does.
Why should we give a fuck about your description of your abhorrent behavior?
So just let me finish. If when we say something like intentionally annoying, we just mean doing an action that we know is going to frustrate someone, that is true. But if it means something like just trying to piss you off, I really am not. I know that I will probably have that effect, but I'm not acting maliciously. I just don't see another way to really operate successfully, productively in the debate without pissing you off. So I think you've created a bit of a fork in the road.
Here's the difference, is I think that the reason that you do it, I think the reason that you do it is because you know if I conclude my argument, it refutes you, and that's why you do it.
I think you've created a bit of a fork in the road where it's either I make you kind of mad or I don't operate effectively in the discussion. So I'm not trying to be a dick. I just understand that
that's not the fork in the road.
Okay, well
that's not the fork in the road. Ask yourself. Here's the fork in the road: is that you have declared that you will interrupt when I begin to refute you. So if you won't allow yourself to be refuted, and you must interrupt in order to not be refuted, that's the fork in the road.
I'm just telling you why I'm doing what I'm doing. Right? There was an. I'm still.
Right, and I think you're lying.
Okay, good for you. I'm just trying to make the same meta point though, which is.
So who gives a fuck? Can we get back to the argument?
Well, if you don't.
All right, Eli. I think I can ask yourself's argument without annoying you. And I think it could.
No, 1 second.
No, I don't think I need to go 1 sec. Actually,
I need to go on a diatribe about why I act like an asshole.
I think this is going nowhere, and we should just open the floor. Actually,
I made it clear that the meta point is something I care about here. So when you try to say I'm doing these bad
Why should we give a shit what you care about?
if you say I'm doing
Yeah,
something
actually,
bad,
kinda, like,
I'm
no
always
offense, but-
I'm always going to clear that up. Now, the thing
Okay,
about
Why should we give a shit what you
Clear.
care about?
the
I think
thing
it's
about-
clear.
The thing about
Okay, hold on a
Eli
second.
doesn't
One
have to
second.
agree with
The
you,
thing-
but it's been made
The
clear.
thing about intentionally frustrating someone, my point about that is just that I'm
We already heard
aware-
this.
Let me finish, please. I'm aware that that's a consequence of what I'm doing, but the intention is not to be malicious.
No.
Yeah, you're
Certainly
repeating
The
not.
yourself.
intention is
It's
to
already
avoid
been said.
reputation.
Okay, all right. Now,
It's like everybody just hit
also-
pause for a sec. Ask yourself.
also-
Hold up a sec. Hold up a sec.
Also,
Okay, I feel like Eli has asked a direct question of ask yourself, and you're intentionally avoiding the question. Ask yourself. So Eli, please
I've-
repeat the question, and then ask yourself. Give a yes
just
or no.
didn't
If
say
you want
what
to
does that have to
clarify-
do with
I'm
the
not going
diet?
to. I'm not
Hold
going
on. If you want to clarify, that's fine.
Yeah,
Afterwards,
he's not going to
but
do it.
No,
I'm saying
there's I don't budge
hold
on
yourself.
some of
Ask
those
yourself.
debate
Hold on.
norms.
Ask yourself. Hold yourself to the same standard you're holding Eli to. Eli is going to repeat his
I
question. and
do,
then you're
but
going
you
to
misunderstand what that standard is. That standard isn't
No,
just
your standard
answering
was to
anytime
give
someone
a-
The
asks a yes
standard
or
is
no.
I don't answer questions that pin me down.
No, I think you
Yeah,
misunderstand
ask
what
yourself.
the
You
standard
asked
is.
Eli to hold on. You said Eli, you should give a direct answer and then the qualifier, and
Mhm.
we all agree that seems fair. So
That's not the
Eli,
standard alone. There's more to it than that. It has to do with how it fits into the dialectic, right? If the question is not logically connected to the dialectic, I'm not going to answer it.
Well, then answer the
obviously.
question and say that's a non sequitur. What the fuck does it have to do with it? But you should still answer the direct question.
What I'm trying to do, firstly, I was trying to clarify the meta point, and there was some other negative thing he said about me that I actually forgot, so I'll have to just leave it at clearing up the one about intentionally annoying. But there is some other thing he said in there that is not what I'm doing. As for the actual dialectic, I'm still saying essentially the exact, not even essentially, literally the exact same thing I've been saying from the very start with Jimbob. You have this proposition, which is the conclusion of Jimbob's argument. It says there is no proper function. Now, if that refers to stance-independent proper function, I don't understand what it means. And if it refers to stance-dependent proper function,
Okay, hold on a sec.
then
Hold on a
it's
sec. Hold on.
false.
Ask yourself. Eli has been very clear
What-
that you can take the word proper right out of this. He's not using it in his argument. You keep bringing it back in to equivocate and not answer the question.
Okay, 1 second.
You
Now,
got to quit
what-
filibustering. I try to be very
I'm
laissez-faire
just-
in the
I'm
moderation,
just-
but you have not answered any of his questions.
I think that is very likely. I haven't heard all of them, but you have to understand that for me, I don't conform to some of these debate norms. Like I think the debate space has a
You're
lot of
being
really
exposed
bad.
as a sophist is what's happening. That's all that's happening is you're being exposed as a sophist.
I think it has a lot of really toxic norms. Like I don't accept norms like equal
answering
speaking
questions.
Time. Not in all contexts. No, I think sometimes the right thing to do is literally to not answer a question. What I care about really is
Then debate over. Then debate over. You get the fuck out of here.
What I care
if
about
you're
really
refusing to
is
engage,
what I care about really is linearity, right? I want to make sure that
If
we're
you get to
actually
arbitrarily choose
I wanna
what questions
make
you do and don't answer, then you're not a debater. You're a sophist.
that's
Get the fuck
also
out of
not-
here.
That's also not what I said. Did I say it's arbitrary? Of course it's not arbitrary.
Is it stance dependent?
What I just said is that I care about linearity. I don't think you know what I mean by linearity.
Why should I give a
But-
shit what you care about? I want you to make an argument, and I want you to answer my questions.
Look, if you don't want to have the same dialectic as I do, we can stop talking. We don't have to continue.
Okay, what is the dialectic? Hold on, everybody. Let me ask you one more. One more.
That's a toxic debate.
Okay,
We
one.
don't want to be
One
linear.
more.
We don't want to be linear, dude.
As long
It's
as I'm
toxic. We're not
as
going
long
to
as-
be linear.
Hello.
Guys,
As long
We
as I'm
define it as
hello,
toxic.
as
No,
long
fuck
as
this.
long as
Mute the
I'm
cunt.
as long
Mute
as
him.
I'm
Hold up.
as long as I'm
Hold
talking.
up.
As
Hold
long,
up.
no,
I'm
Mute him.
about
no, I don't
hold
accept
up.
that.
Hold
no.
up.
As long
Hold
as
up. I'll
I'm
keep
talking,
saying hold
I'm
up.
going to be doing
I'll
the
Mute
exact
him.
same
In the
hold
front
up.
of mute him.
The
I will start
conversation-
muting people.
I don't-
I will start
I'm
muting
going,
people.
you're not
I
going to
will
get
start-
anywhere by muting.
I'll
I'm
start
just going
muting
to
people.
resume
I'll
at the
start
exact
muting
same
people.
place.
Stop talking
As
over
long
me.
as
I'm
I'm
trying
talking,
to moderate,
I'm going
dude.
Ask yourself.
Calm
Calm
down.
down.
I'm
Calm down.
trying to
Stop
moderate.
As long as I'm having the conversation, I'm going to approach it in the exact same way. What I care about is
Mute him.
linearity. When interruptions are okay or not, that also is going to be a function of linearity. Now, here is what I'm not understanding, okay? Jimbob's conclusion is there is no proper function. Now, I've said that what confuses me about that is that I don't understand the sense of proper function being used. If it's a stance-independent notion, then I'm not clear that it's actually a coherent proposition. If
Ask
on the
yourself.
other
You're
hand,
totally bringing
it's
up a non sequitur,
if on
dude.
the other hand, please stop. If on the other hand,
No, it's a total non sequitur. Eli
sorry,
said multiple
if
times,
on
stop
the
bringing up the
other
word
hand-
proper.
If on the other hand, it's a stance-dependent notion, then I don't have any trouble understanding it, but I just think the conclusion's false. Now, what I'm trying to understand with Eli is whether he is ultimately trying to convey to me, in the original conclusion of Jimbob's argument, when he uses that, is he using that term in a stance independent way or a stance dependent way? If he's using it in a stance independent way, I need that concept conveyed to me. So let's just get clear about that.
Okay, let me get in here then. So
answer.
I demonstrated to you.
Make sure to answer.
Okay, what I demonstrated to you.
You're not answering.
Is that
You're doing it again. You're doing it again,
Hey,
dude.
stop.
You're doing.
Ask
no.
yourself.
Look at this. Look at this.
Why,
Look at
I
this.
don't even think that
Oh, you gotta review me.
Shut up. I obviously don't care about your debate norms. So
All
right, he's serving you the Eli. You got the floor. I'm sick of this shit. He doesn't get to railroad us. This is our fucking community. If he doesn't like it, he can fuck off. Now, ask yourself.
I appreciate that.
I hope this is the only time I'm going to have to mute you, okay? I don't think you're a dick. I actually don't, okay? But I'm irritated with the fact that you were talking over.
I guess we'll just deafen until I see myself unmuted. We'll undeafen when unmuted.
That's fine. I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if Jimbob is here or not.
To be clear, do you guys want to actually continue the dialectic I want to have or not? If not, I can leave and you guys can talk amongst
We want
yourselves.
to get into a resolution, and
I would like for Eli to have an opportunity to respond.
Look,
you're not letting him respond.
Please understand that it's very obvious I'm approaching this in a certain way. I'm not going to conform to how you want to have the conversation. If that's the case, if that's the case, then we could just end it. Just say as much. You're not willing to conform.
This is a very toxic debate.
Please stop.
It's very toxic.
Please stop.
They're just banning it.
Please stop.
You please stop. How about you please stop? Please stop.
If you, there we go. Okay, I told you it would end with them banning me. Cooks.